Welcome, all you Chad nerds, all you space boys from the planet Soys. What's up? Got a lot of sass talking today on the internet, a lot of sassing. And as you know, when we got sass talkers, I always open it up to give the sass an opportunity to come and make their case, to explain to us why we should believe in whatever the position is, whether it's Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, Calvinism. Today is not about atheism, so we're not talking tag and atheism. If you call in about tag and atheism, I'm immediately going to skip you. We're not talking about random obscure topics. None of that is the topic today. The topics are actually conveniently listed for you. Catholicism, Protestantism, Libertarianism, Black Hebrew Israelites, Arianism, Jehovah's Witnesses, Muslims, Unitarians, Mormons, may all call in, Gnostics. Those are all acceptable topics. Basically, we're not talking tag and we're not talking atheism. We want to see if we can focus on getting the Protestants, the cults, the sects, the groups, the Unitarians, and even, of course, the Roman Catholics, because I'm more and more convinced that the best description for Roman Catholicism is actually a cult. It is an irrational cult that enslaves its people to a religion of dead works, lacking the power thereof, as Paul says, focusing their people on ridiculous superstitions, apparitions, visions, Fatima, when they inevitably encounter the theological contradictions that exist in the religion that are quite fundamental. For example, the top Roman Catholic apologist, and people were surprised that I said the top. I said top because, as far as I'm aware, he has the large audience following, namesake Catholic apologist. I mean, we could say Matt Fradd has a larger channel, but Matt Fradd doesn't engage in a lot of apologetics. He basically sits back, interviews people, and talks in his ridiculous Australian accent.
Oh yeah, I'm Matt Fradd. Oh yeah. I don't like Kiwis. I'm an Australian. Matt Fradd.
I'm just being silly. I do impressions of everybody. I know that Roman Catholics get their feelings hurt when I do that impression. But we had another doubling down. If you recall, some months back, I mentioned the word triad in passing. And Trent Horn assumed, as the original tweet shows, that he thought this meant something to do with Arianism. I said that, in our debate, you were incorrect by misunderstanding the fact that Abraham worshipped the Trinity. Trent thought this was mind-blowing. How? No. Natural theology teaches me that they worshipped a Unitarian God in the Old Testament. And then he says, I asked if they knew that God was a Trinity. Jewish multiplicity in the Godhead could be akin to Proto-Arianism. No. In fact, the very point of why we would argue that the Old Testament teaches a triad is to prove that they were Trinitarian, Trent. So, as you can see, his initial reply is quite literally a fundamental misunderstanding of the basics that every Orthodox Christian knows by looking at the Rublev icon, that the Old Testament saints worship the triad. And Trent says, you even had to use the word triad to describe it, but you would say that modern people that worship triad, as in Jehovah's Witnesses, are not worshiping the one true God. So notice that very clearly, Trent didn't even understand the very common terminology amongst the Greek fathers, the Byzantine theologians, the very theologians who dogmatized and solidified and explicated the Trinity, Cappadocians, St. Maximus, etc. For Trent, he thinks this is somehow bound up with Arianism. Even though Trent attended, according to his own description, for many years, or presumably for many years, the Eastern Rite, The Eastern Rite hails Palamas as a saint, which actually makes no sense, given the fact that he was considered a damnable heretic for many centuries. And then notice that the most famous work that he has is called the Triads. A simple search would tell you that amongst the Orthodox world, triad refers to Trinity. Now, does Trent simply say, oh, I misunderstood, you're correct? No, he doubles down because it shows that he's not even familiar with basic terminology in the very fathers that dogmatize the Trinity. Doubles down and says, no, this is an Egyptian term. What? The word can be synonymous with Trinity, but it's more common as a grouping of deities. Look at the 1996 Egyptology book from John Griffith. Now, the more common use is not something from an obscure Egyptologist, Trent. The more common use is what you should know from the uniate world and the Orthodox world of triad, meaning Trinity. This is just silly. Now, Trent doubles down again and says that Old Testament Jews did not worship the Trinity. He says it right here. Did the faithful Jews who lived before Christ's incarnation worship God? If they did, then they must have worshipped the same God of the Trinity of the Christians, even though they didn't worship. Trent does not believe that the Old Testament saints worship the triad, even though Jesus in John 5-9 says that they worshipped the Father, his angel, and his Spirit. So Trent doesn't even know that the Old Testament teaches the triad. Now, I pointed this out at the time of the debate and after we had our debate, and Trent and other people tried to save face and tried to do damage control. He didn't mean that. He didn't mean that. He says right here, literally a few seconds ago, that they didn't believe in the Trinity. So do you understand that Roman Catholics do not understand the Trinity? And I don't mean in terms of an intellectual comprehension. I mean they fundamentally have ridiculous, stupid theology. And in order to save face and defend his natural theology a la Vatican II's Nostra Aetate, Trent is literally saying that they believed in a Unitarian God. The very thing that I said was the problem in the debate. Trent still thinks that the Old Testament people believed in a Unitarian God and not the triad. So this refutes all of the Roman Catholic liars that sat here saying that that's not what Trent means. Why do you Roman Catholics feel the need to lie? And how could you be this silly in your theology to be so ignorant of the Old Testament? Again, proving my point in the debate that how would you argue against a Muslim? Do you not understand that to debate any Muslim requires going to the Old Testament to prove the Trinity? I even showed a video that was my opening statement in the Daniel Hakikachu debate to Trent, which apparently he hasn't watched because it refutes his stupid heresy. And Acts 17 in no way says that they worshiped a Unitarian God. It's just like this guy is on another planet and doesn't even understand what the debate is. And now the Libertarian says he can't hop on. Dude, I sent you the link. There's no reason why you can't hop on this debate. It's an open chat. You wanted to debate. Now you're saying he can't get on here. Give me a break. Here you are. You hopped on here. Now, all right, where's the actual video? I hope you guys understand that this means that Roman Catholics don't have the basics of the Trinity. I'm pretty sure the Trinity is a pretty important doctrine. And you just saw Trent say that in the tweet that he just put up The very thing that all of his defenders were saying he didn't mean. He says it again. Now let's remind ourselves of a few moments of the debate with Daniel Hakikachu, because it turns out Trent and Daniel have the same God, the Unitarian generic God of natural theism. Now, I know that Trent would confess to believe in the Trinity and the deity of Christ, but he doesn't understand that he's got two conflicting, contradictory positions in his worldview. And he doubled and tripled down in the last hour on Twitter on this. So I repeat again, did the Old Testament saints worship a generic Unitarian deity? The very thing that Trent and Roman Catholicism, Nostra Aetate, and Trent just now, within the last 5 minutes, reaffirmed? Or did they worship the triad, as every Orthodox person knows? You understand that this is fundamental to us. And they're still wandering around, groping in the dark, like the pagans of Acts 17. Not understanding that it's a triad in the very beginning. Because their theology is all jacked up and dumb. That's why. Because they're in a giant machine that they have to make all of these pieces work and make this giant algorithm that's a giant bunch of contradictions fit together, and they don't. They don't even know what recapitulation is. They don't even know what monarchical Trinitarianism is when it's fundamental in orthodoxy. So let's go back to how we would argue with a Muslim to refute Trent. Were the Old Testament Jews generic Unitarians? Let's look at Jewish scholarship explaining to us what they believed.
Which may cause some people some surprise, is that the Old Testament prophets were Trinitarian. They were not Unitarian. Judaism, specifically in the Second Temple period, was not a monolithic Unitarian enterprise. The question becomes, what are the teachings of the prophets in the Old Testament? Did they actually teach, as Islam says, a radical Unitarianism? Or is it something more fluid, or is there differentiation in Yahweh? In fact, modern Jewish scholarship unanimously is undecided on this question. There's a lot of Jewish scholarship that is listed here. For example, Daniel Boyarin. Later, I have Sommer and I have Siegel. And they admit that in the Old Testament itself, not due to Christian deviation, but in the Old Testament itself, we find many, many passages that show differentiation in Yahweh. That differentiation is not just located in rabbinic debates. It also continues into later medieval debates with Jewish Kabbalah. And you can see there, for example, Gershom Scholem in his book on Kabbalah. He's the respected Kabbalist theologian of the Middle Ages, or scholar of medieval Kabbalah. He points out, for example, the three beginningless lights that are mentioned. Now, I'm not a Kabbalist. I'm just pointing out that this shows that the Jewish tradition is not monolithic in its presentation. So I'd like to come back then to my screen, to me here, and point out that the first display of Trinitarian theology in the Law and the Prophets is, for example, here on this whiteboard. And I'm showing this whiteboard because, hopefully you guys can see this. This is a tremendous amount of text.
Now, this list of texts that you see me post, if you've read Justin Martyr against Trypho the Jew, is Trent even aware that Justin Martyr argues from the Old Testament theophanies to prove the deity of Christ and his attempt at proving triad? It's like Trent's never talked to a Muslim or never read these church fathers. Oh, but wait a minute, Trent didn't know what the word triad meant. He thought it was a pagan anti-Trinitarian term when it's constantly used in the Eastern Church Fathers. So now Trent is doubling down, as we said, tripling down, that the Old Testament saints did not worship the Trinity. They worshiped a Unitarian God. Has he never read John 5 through 9? Has he not read 2 Corinthians 3, where Paul says that Moses looked face to face with Jesus? If no man sees the Father at any time, as Jesus argues in John to the Pharisees in John 5, then who was Moses talking to? This is the point of Jesus' argument to the Pharisees. I don't think Trent knows the Bible very well at all, and particularly not the Old Testament at all. I think Trent knows a lot of pop apologetics, because remember, Trent was not too long ago a deist who converted to Roman Catholicism. And so I don't think Trent knows the Trinity. I think he just accepts that the papacy got all this right. And that's why most of his debates are cultural issues or the papacy. I mean, maybe he's debated other topics. I don't know. I don't follow these pop Roman Catholic apologists because they're typically pretty low tier. But I mean, this is just sort of mind-blowing to me. What did we just talk about last night? We spent the first hour talking about Old Testament predictions of the Messiah. And when the Muslim called in, we started to go into various texts in Isaiah. And as I mentioned, there are more than you could even imagine in Isaiah if you haven't read Isaiah in a long time. It's called the fifth gospel for a reason. Trent, why would it be called the fifth gospel if the Old Testament teaches a Unitarian God? Why is the Messiah said to be worshipped? Why does it talk about Yahweh, his son, his angel, his covenant messenger, and his spirit? All the way back in Genesis. Do you understand that Genesis teaches the triad? Do you understand that when Trypho is arguing against Justin Martyr keeps arguing from Genesis and other passages to prove that? Who do you think Jacob was wrestling with? It's like these people have never read the Bible or something. But wait a minute. If we're talking about Roman Catholics, that's actually fairly plausible. Outside of someone like Scott Hahn, I'm starting to think that maybe they don't actually read the Bible. It's a closed book to them. As Paul says, it's a closed book to the Jews in 2 Corinthians 3. The very passage where it says Moses was talking face to face with Christ, that the Jews have the veil over their heart, it's almost like Roman Catholics and Muslims have the veil over their heart. Yeah, because they're facsimile fake religions. That's why. They're religions of dead works without the power thereof.
And I'm just citing these because there's too many to fit on a single screen there with typing it all out. You can screenshot this later and go check the various textual references here for just examples of theophanies. And the reason I've included the theophanies is that these are particularly useful for demonstrating the manifestation of Yahweh in the Old Testament, proving differentiation. So not just Yahweh, but also the angel messenger that he sends, who has the name of Yahweh, as we read in Exodus, the same angel that's present in the burning bush. That angel is spoken of as the messenger of the covenant. He's spoken of as, in Judges, turning the face of Yahweh towards Gideon.
Yahweh turns his face to Gideon. So are you noticing a pattern that the refutation of Muslims is becoming the refutation of the Roman Catholics? Because Trent's actually in a backwards way, backdoor way, correct, that actually you and the Muslim and the Jew do worship the same God because it's the wrong God. So Roman Catholics, Muslims, and Jews actually do worship the same Unitarian God, and that's the wrong one. So actually Trent, in a roundabout way, is actually correct. And why does he say that? Because that's the basis of his church's dogmatic teaching in Nostra Aetate, and he doesn't even realize that citing Acts 17 doesn't prove this. Citing Romans 1 doesn't prove this. He's just assuming that Acts 17 and Romans 1 teach natural theology, when Romans 1 doesn't say anything about syllogisms and a ratiocination process about syllogisms and coming to some conclusion at the end of a bunch of syllogisms about a generic God existing. Romans 1 says that it's on the heart of every man. It doesn't say anything about intellectual syllogisms. It's not talking about natural theology in your ridiculous church's sense. But Trent knows he has to defend Nostra Aetate, saying that he and the Hindu and all of them worship the same God. Isn't that interesting? The Hindu also is part of this natural theology process, and he thinks Acts 17 backs this up. All Acts 17 says is that God is the one giving these providential gifts to everyone, and yet he is unknown. The very point of the passage is that the God that they're after is unknown to them. And yet Trent is telling me, no, actually, at the end of a rational process, the pagan can reason out and come to, at the end of a syllogism. How many pagans are sitting there doing syllogisms outside of Aristotle? Let's be real here. Come on, this is preposterous. And even his own people, his own cohorts whom he's had debates with, are falling out like Tim and recognizing, hey, wait a minute, the Roman Catholic Church's post-Vatican II teaching on the Jews is a direct contradiction to the pre-Vatican II teaching on the Jews. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's also a contradiction when it comes to Muslims and Hindus too. You don't see that? The Catholic Church regards with esteem the Muslims. Oh, you mean the ones that you called crusades against in the Middle Ages? You esteem them? They adore the one God. What is the one God that's shared between a Muslim and a Roman Catholic when every Muslim will tell you that we don't worship the same God as you? There is no generic unity that is shared amongst an anti-Trinitarian group and a satanic group and a monotheistic group. If I believe that Satan is the creator of heaven and earth and that he lives and subsists in himself, am I then also esteemed by the Catholic Church with the Muslims? Do you see how stupid this is? And then it goes on to say, although they don't revere Jesus as God, they revere him as a prophet. Oh, so anti-Trinitarians. So now we can substitute Eunomians and Arians and Jehovah's Witnesses. The church regards with esteem the Arians. Does it? Because I'm pretty sure at Nicaea it calls Arius the mouth of Satan. So now we regard Arius as the mouth of Satan? I mean, as a true worshiper of the one God? Do you understand? Muslims are more removed than Arians are from Christianity. There are multiple attributes that Muslims don't believe in. They do not believe that God is immanent in the world. And maybe even some Roman Catholics don't believe that. Who knows? I mean, this whole Roman Catholic system is a gigantic mess. And you've noticed they won't come and debate anymore. All they're left with is why I'm a bad person. That's all they've had for the last 7 years, is how I'm a bad person. And yet they keep expanding in their carbohydrate intake. Have you noticed that Ibarra and Lofton are looking even fluffier? Well, I guess when the religion is no help, you take solace in the buffet and in dainties and pastries. But it's not just Muslims. Oh, whereas the Roman Catholic Church formerly talked very negatively in its liturgical practices about Jews, now they're the elder brothers. And they're part of the covenant? That doesn't make any sense. That's a contradiction to previous traditional Roman Catholic teaching. Now, where's the Hindu statement? Yeah. Now, remember, this is not saying that Hindus seek out and have a natural desire for the one true God, because we could say that all human beings have an innate desire for God, because we all have a nous. This says that in Hinduism, in other words, in the false religious system, the demonic system of Hinduism, and if you read Father Seraphim Rose's Orthodox and the Religion of the Future, you can see very clearly that from the Christian perspective, this is a horrendous, terrible demonic religion. Does Vatican II say that? It doesn't mention anything about it being demonic. It says, in Hinduism, men contemplate the divine mystery and express it through an inexhaustible abundance of myths. They seek freedom from the anguish of human condition through ascetical practices or a profound meditation or flight to God with love and trust. God with a capital G. Did you read the first sentence? In Hinduism, in a completely demonic religion, Paul says that the gods of the nations are devils. David says the gods of the nations are devils. There's no better example of this than Hinduism. Vatican II says in Hinduism, they seek a flight to capital G God with love and trust. And then it says similar things about Buddhism. The deities of Hinduism and Buddhism are not the triad. They are not secretly Jesus. If Jesus has a way to reach those people, he can do that. But it is not the demonic system of Hinduism or of Buddhism that is the means by which they reach God. And that's the bizarro language of Vatican II. And it's not just Nostra Aetate. The same stuff is said in Lumen Gentium 16. Because these liars will always sit here and say, well, we don't have to accept Nostra Aetate because it doesn't have the same level of authority as the other documents. You got to accept them all. And what a ridiculous system anyway, because it doesn't even tell you which documents are which. Every individual Roman Catholic has to figure out which documents are in which authority bin. The plan of salvation includes those who acknowledge the Creator. Okay, what does that mean? Does that mean I only have to acknowledge a generic idea of a Creator, like a Freemason does, or a theistic Satanist? The first amongst these is the Muslims, who hold the faith of Abraham. No, you don't hold the faith of Abraham if you're anti-Trinitarian. Have you read Galatians? The only way to be the seed of Abraham is in Christ. Because Abraham worshipped the triad. Did you hear me, Trent? Muslims worship and adore the one God. No, Muslims do not adore God. You understand? Adoration is worship. So this implies that God accepts the worship of anti-Trinitarian groups like Muslims. Muslims hate the triad. They hate Christ because they don't believe that he is deity, divine. And John says, if you don't believe that Christ is God in the flesh, you are a spirit of Antichrist. So this is saying that people who have the spirit of Antichrist motivating them to stamp out Christianity and the Trinity and the deed of Christ are part of the plan of salvation and also actually worship Christ. This is preposterous. This alone is enough to tell you that this is not the true religion. This is a departure from Christianity. And Trent and all the other frauds are defending this. And they will keep doubling down and doubling down and doubling down, because to admit that they're wrong on this means this whole system collapses. And Roman Catholicism is a giant cult. And they cannot accept that it is this blatant, this out in the open, and this fraudulent. And it is, because it's in everyone's face. This is why they act so. They act out so. This is why they spurg out. This is why they lose it. This is why they're calling you names and everything in the book. It's all a manifestation of the deep down insecurity and fear that they know about their papacy and what it does and how it acts and how deceptive it is. Now, on top of this, we had Francis. Let's see if there's anything else in this. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about this, and then we'll go back to the point about Francis's Skittles comment, which I'm sorry that you people can't figure out that Francis throws a bone to the trads about once every few years, and then he immediately walks it back. He's done this the entire time. By the way, all the post-Vatican II popes have done this very same thing, where they charge forward with 2 or 3 years of absolutely scandalous, rebellious behavior, and then they walk it back 2 steps. You walk 10 steps and walk back 2 steps. It's a very common Overton window. It's a methodology. It's a technique of bureaucracy and control. And then you throw a bone to the trads to keep them on the leash. And they all fall for it. All these people fall for it because they're naive and they're dupes. And so Francis says Skittles stuff, promotes Skittles civil unions openly everywhere, and then says supposedly, oh, but we don't want F in the seminaries. Oh, by the way, did he do anything about it, or did he just say something? Because the entire trad Catholic Twitter world is championing this like this is some great achievement. All you're showing is your own how foolish you are. Because he can talk all day long and throw you a bone all day long. Nothing changes. He's not doing anything. He could reform these seminaries. He has the total plenary authority of the Roman bishop, universal authority. He could excommunicate all of these erring bishops in one stroke of a pen. He doesn't do any of that. He throws you dummies a bone and you eat it up. And then tomorrow he'd be back to the revolution. And it wasn't even 24 hours before he walked it back and cucked his comments, as Luigi showed on his Twitter. So, by the way, as soon as I put up my tweet, I said, how long? Countdown to Francis apologizing for his comment. It wasn't even 24 hours. I didn't even get to put my tweet up. He was already apologizing before I could even make a joke.
Later, or we can go back to any of those. And so let me go back to my screen share here and point out that the triad there, I don't mean to argue either that the Old Testament explicitly uses the words triad. No, all that's necessary, as the Jewish scholars are admitting, is that the Old Testament believers spoke of Father.
Yeah, I have to address this because this is such a basic argument that's so dumb. Okay, it doesn't matter if the Old Testament saints use the word triad or not. They don't have to use the word Trinity. Okay, you understand? Whether it's Theophilus or whether it's Tertullian, using the word Trinity in 150, 180. Okay, we wouldn't be so stupid as to say that nobody believed in the Trinity until Theophilus or Tertullian uses the word Trinity. Okay, you understand how dumb that is? When Justin Martyr argues for the Trinity, he uses the Old Testament text. That means he's arguing that the Old Testament teaches the Trinity. They don't have to use the word Trinity. Just like when you translate the gospel into Inuit, you don't have to use the word Trinity. Use whatever the Inuit word is for that. This is so dumb. And I can't believe somebody as intelligent as Trent, who is intelligent, is that he can't get this. Or that he doubles down on these foolish mistakes. It's bizarre to me. Which tells me this is a cult. Tell me what the difference is between Roman Catholicism and a giant cult. I don't see it. And once Father Moses said that the other day, I'm like, you know what? This is a giant cult. And they all act like total cult leaders. I mean, cult believers, I should say. Because they freak out and foam at the mouth and lose it when you start bringing this stuff up.
Angel of the Lord or Son of Man and the Spirit in a real distinctive way, and they do. Although,
I mean, imagine using the New Testament to prove the Trinity and then trying to say that nobody knows the Trinity until the word is used or until Nicaea. Do you understand how stupid that is? If we're using the New Testament to prove the doctrine of the Trinity, then it means the New Testament teaches the Trinity and the Old Testament. This is so dumb. I can't believe anybody would make this dumb of an argument. And by the way, it's actually the argument that Muslims make. Muslims say, Trinity not used till Tertullian. Tertullian used word Trinity. Invented Trinity. Invented at Nicaea. Trinity. You're using the Muslim arguments, Trent. Why are you people following these people? What is wrong with you people? How are you so deluded? How are you so confused? To follow, you have no discernment at all? You don't have a discernment to figure out that people pushing Stabby for years? Why would you trust their discernment on this stuff? I'm baffled. I can't understand what it is about you people that you find attractive about this stuff. Are you that low tier in your argumentation? What do you mean, you people? I mean, you people in the audience that follow Trent and Matt Fradd and Carbohydrate Lofton. Like, how are you that low tier? I can't understand. Help me understand. Come on the chat, please. Please come on and help me understand what is so convincing in these uber low tier Muslim level arguments from people like Trent Horn. I can't understand it. Help me understand, please. You don't see how low tier this is? I mean, I know a bunch of you have watched Sam Shamoun debate. And when Sam Shamoun debates, where does he prove the Trinity from when he's debating the Muslims and the Jews and the Unitarians? The Old Testament. And here's Trent telling you that, no, Jews didn't worship the Trinity in the Old Testament. The Old Testament saints worshiped a generic deity. Here's another Roman Catholic at least admitting that Trent is way off base. I'm Roman Catholic and Jay is right. I don't understand what Trent is doing. Trent can't admit he's wrong. And because to admit that he's wrong on something so fundamental exposes that Trent basically doesn't know fundamental theology. This is embarrassing for a Roman Catholic theologian, an apologist. Do you see what he says right here? Faithful Jews, did they worship God before Christ? He says they did, but not the Trinity. There is no God but Trinity. So Trent triples down on the very mistake that I called out in the debate. Trent is a Muslim. He's making all the arguments Muslims make. Do you know how many times I've had Muslims? Last night, the Muslim that called in. What did he say? Oh, the Jews not worship Trinity. Don't believe in Trinity in book. Don't see Trinity. Oh, well, okay, I guess that settles it. Trent Horn. Sheikh Trent Horn. Follow the great son of Thomas Summa Abu Aquinas. I'm gonna start calling him Sheikh Trent Horn. What to do, Trent? What, Sheikh Trent Horn? That's when they start singing the Quran, you know. They're gonna like the Shias. They sing the songs to Ali. And they're going to start singing to Trent, to Abu Trent. Abu! Anyway. I don't know. So we're going to open it up. Somebody said Pearl is in Trent's harem. That's funny. Ali and Trent Horn. All right. We're going to open it up. By the way, I used to think this idea of Chrislam was that seems silly and ridiculous. Then once I saw Pope Francis pushing this Abu Dhabi Multi-Faith Center, all right, I guess I was wrong. All right, we're going to open it up. That means you call in. You can make an argument on whatever you want in the list of acceptable topics today. The list of acceptable topics are Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, Evangelicalism, Calvinism, Libertarianism. I think that guy's still here. Arianism, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Muslims, Black Hebrew Israelites, Hebrew Roots movements. Those are all acceptable topics today. Pagans, neo-pagans. So basically, we're not talking tag and we're not talking atheism. We're only talking about those other topics. So basically, we could just call this, well, I was going to say we could call it cults, but atheism is another type of cult, so that didn't even work. But you call in on the space right there. Now, I've got all the things ready to go. We can talk about whatever topic you want. I've got Denzinger here. I've got all the papal encyclicals here. I've got the Chieti document, the Alexandria document. I've got the Bible pulled up. I've got it all ready to go. All right. Today's first requester is a libertarian man, Dennis Pratt, who wants to discuss. Ali. You gotta unmute, dude.
Me?
Hey.
Hello, this is Dennis Pratt.
What's up, man?
Hi. I was listening to your first hour, and I'm not too sure if we have a debate here. I'm a libertarian. I live in New Hampshire. I'm 42 years in the libertarian movement. And I'm part of the Free State movement, which is moving libertarians to a particular state to basically gather together, create a liberty society, and get away from people who aren't particularly interested in libertarianism. You know, you could think of it as a migration of Catholics to create a Catholic state, or a migration of Jews to create a Jewish state.
Yeah, I think my main issues in terms of libertarianism is that it's kind of premised on a lot of Enlightenment values. And although I would agree with some of the ideas in libertarianism, I'm just not sure how or why I should believe in classical liberalism. So would you say, for example, that you believe in utilitarian ethics as a libertarian?
No. I'm primarily an ethicist. So I believe that libertarianism is actually rests on a very simple concept that one owns one's own body fully and exclusively. And from there, all of libertarianism springs forth. The non-aggression principle: if you own something, you can protect it, and you may not take someone else's body. So, from there we get the right of association, which is moving my body in concert with someone else who consents. We get the right of speech, using my body to exercise its vocal cords. We get the right to labor, which is using my body and movement to produce things. Libertarianism is actually a very, very thin ethic. It doesn't say what one ought to do in order to be a good man. That we rely on other religions and philosophies to do.
Okay.
What it says is that here's a minimum standard under which if you fall, you are doing evil, and that is violating someone else's self-ownership.
I'm glad that you brought this up. By the way, I was an anarcho-libertarian trained by some of the very best, and I abandoned that. But I'm glad you brought up the point that it's premised on self-ownership. Now, as Orthodox, we would deny that. You don't own yourself. And so, as you had explicated all the what's known as the rights that the negative rights that you discussed there are premised on that. So, how do you typically conceive or respond to somebody that says you don't own yourself? And we reject that first principle.
Well, my guess is that you believe that you are a steward of God's ownership. Is that accurate?
Sure.
Yes.
Right. So has God ceded that stewardship to another person, another human?
No, I mean, and in a loose sense, we can talk about. I prefer to stay away from rights language, but obviously, Orthodox Christians aren't going to say that you can enslave a person,
Right. Exactly.
or something like that. However, it's usually cashed out more in terms of duties and of virtue ethics rather than ownership. Because part of the problem is this is kind of an absolute that, like, you own yourself, and therefore freedom becomes the highest principle. Although Orthodox Christians value freedom, it's not an absolute. There's higher things. So that means in certain situations, I have no problem violating the NAP. Like, I don't actually, if it violates higher principles, I really, we don't care if that violates somebody's will. Now, I don't think that you can put that into its slavery. It just means freedom's not an absolute.
So under what conditions would you say that a man may be enslaved by you, for example? How might that happen?
Well, I rejected enslavement, but for example, I have no problem if, for example, somebody's moral choices, if the state, if they were so detrimental, the state stepped in and says, we're not going to allow you to do this, and we don't care about your freedom on that, because there's certain things, the preservation of a Christian ethos and a societal structure that's healthy and promotes virtue that would override somebody's freedom. So in that case, it would be, if it's deemed to violate higher principles, it would be.
I have a question too. After that, go ahead.
And that makes good sense. So what you're saying is that there is a group of people who basically can decide what your body may do and what it may not do. Is that accurate?
Well, I mean, hold on. I have a question because I think you're missing that. You just posited the very thing that you're saying nobody has the right to do, which is to tell people what is the correct metaphysical stance of their body. So you said, for example, that you have to follow the NAP, which is you own yourself and to not harm others. And then you said a few sentences later that, but there's also no oughts. Well, why ought I follow the NAP if there's no oughts?
Are you speaking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I said that there is no oughts?
Yeah.
No, I thought I asked you. You said that if a group of people deemed actions.
No, in your opening statement, you said, I don't hold that there's oughts, like we ought to do this or that.
Or you said that libertarianism doesn't hold that.
Yeah.
And that you subscribe to that. That you have to look to ethics and philosophy to decide that.
Yeah, why ought I follow the NAP?
Right. So I was saying, I don't know exactly what the ought came in. But let me restate it. The self-ownership, libertarianism, which is really just a minimal ethic. It's not the highest ethic. It's the minimal ethic. It is the ethic below which you cannot go unless you, and going beneath it, you are evil.
Okay, why ought I follow the NAP?
I'm sorry?
Why ought I follow the NAP?
Because of self-ownership, because of self-respect, because of respect of self-ownership.
But we don't believe that.
Well, but that's not telling me why I ought to follow. That's stating what you believe. I'm saying, right. Why ought I believe the NAP?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, are you granting self-ownership and not accepting NAP? Or are you saying that you do not have self-ownership, that God has ownership, and
no? I'm asking even more fundamental. You said you're an ethicist, so in terms of ethics, what's the normativity for the NAP? On what basis ought I follow it?
Yep. So self-ownership. Self-ownership is our fundamental.
Okay, that doesn't answer the question of ought. Stating what your position is doesn't tell me why I ought to do it.
Well, you use your body in order to deny self-ownership.
Okay, but that's a statement of what is the case or what happens. That doesn't tell me why it ought to be some way or not some way.
I am stating, I don't know that I've stated an ought.
No, I'm asking you why I ought to follow the NAP.
I see. If you do not follow the NAP, you are violating self-ownership. You are saying that
but we don't believe that. But we deny that.
Right. I understand that. So you're denying self-ownership, which is fundamental to libertarianism. Now we could talk about the reason why we believe in self-ownership. Some people think it's axiomatic. I don't believe it's axiomatic. I believe you have to actually use your own body as owner of it to deny it itself. So it's a performative contradiction to actually deny self-ownership. You're using your body and saying, I don't own my body. And if who is this person who is using this body to deny that they may use it?
Okay, but none of that tells me any ought or any basis to believe in an ought in regard to the NAP.
Well, we would have to first establish self-ownership. Okay. And if you're my question back.
But even if you establish that is the case, that doesn't tell me that I ought to abide by the NAP. Maybe I believe that I own myself and that I should set up a dictatorship at the Kwisatz Haderach, and I'm the God Emperor, and I'm going to take your wives and set up a harem. So why ought I not do that?
So you don't believe? So in that case, one would not believe that each person owns oneself. One would believe that you own yourself and you own other humans.
No, what I'm saying is that there's no basis to believe. Right. So there's not a basis for ethics, is the point.
I'm just trying to get clear. Are you saying that you would believe that you own yourself and you own other human beings?
I'm saying that even if I accept your first principle that there's self-ownership, nothing about self-ownership tells me that I should accept the non-aggression principle.
I see. So if you believe it, let's go ahead and grant that there is self-ownership. And now, if you violate someone else's self-ownership, you're saying that that's not a terrible thing to do.
Yeah. On what basis is it terrible or wrong?
So, if you murder someone, you rape them, you're just utilizing their body for your own self. Aren't you denying their self-ownership then? Taking their body.
I can believe in my self-ownership. Why do I have to respect anyone else's? I mean, if you want to talk about natural rights, for example, when I look out in nature, I don't see the animal kingdom caring about the rights of other prey that the predators prey upon.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, we would say that they're not self-owners.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm saying that if I want to base rights in nature, if you believe in natural rights, maybe you don't. I don't. I believe in rights based on self-ownership. Okay, but self-ownership doesn't tell me that I am bound to, in an ethical way, believe in other people's self-ownership or respect their self-ownership.
Right. And that's where we were just a little while ago, where you were saying, I own myself, but no one else owns them. I may abuse their bodies as I choose.
What I'm saying is that you need a basis for that ethic extending beyond the individual. Why is this a universal principle that everybody should follow the NAP?
So what Jay's saying is, even if one granted, and we don't, but you own yourself, there's no moral that follows that I can't steal the person or enslave them or do something. This is like going from, it's like the naturalistic fallacy is basically saying, all you stated is you own yourself, and now you're moving to an ethic, then you ought not to enslave or do these things to other people. Well, that doesn't follow. That's all Jay's pointing out.
Well, I'm arguing that you're denying self-ownership by owning another human. You're saying, well, I own myself, and how do you know
why
that?
does it? But that's just assuming that it extends universally. Why should I assume that?
Well, because how do you own yourself? You only
That's
own
just
yourself
restating
by
the
a
position.
universal-
How do you
you
justify that it extends out beyond me? I know you're saying you think it does, but on what basis? Why should I think that?
Well, you have no basis then for your own self-ownership.
No, I can
Right.
affirm my own self-ownership and just simply not extend that to anyone else. And why
Right.
am I wrong in doing that?
Well, because they have self-ownership, because
That's
they
on
own
what
them-
basis? You're just reasserting the position. I want to know on what basis is that extended beyond me.
You're denying if you have no basis to know that you are a self-owner. If you're saying that I am a unique human being and only I have self-ownership and everyone else I own, there's no you have to assert self-ownership. You have to say, well, not I own myself because I control my body. I think of this
Yeah.
as my body.
And why
have
am I bound to
actually own it.
respect other people's self-ownership?
Well, because you would be disrespecting their self-ownership.
Yeah, exactly. So what's wrong with that? So you can't.
We are saying, so Libertarianism is saying that disrespecting self-ownership is evil. That is where evil lies.
Oh, no, it's exactly. So now we're in the domain of value judgments. What's your basis for value judgments?
Self-ownership.
Yeah, and we've already been about 20 times through why that doesn't work as a justification.
Because you're saying that you could just go ahead and say, I own myself. And
I'm
I
saying
own
you're making a move
everyone.
that's not justified to extend that out beyond the individual to everybody universally. How do you have a basis for any universal ethical moral claims? On what basis is that universalized? Maybe it is, but what's the basis?
Well, I don't think that you can apply it to yourself unless it is universal.
Well, that doesn't tell you that it is universal. That's just saying that you think it is. How do I know
And
that?
that doesn't even follow either. I mean, think about the problem of other minds. You can affirm your own mind.
Yeah.
It doesn't logically follow there are other minds because you affirm your own mind, assuming that were even self-evident.
Yeah, I mean, we start with self-ownership, and perhaps you're arguing that it's just axiomatic. I mean, if this is actually one of the reasons
I don't believe
why-
in axioms, so I'm arguing it's not axiomatic.
This is actually one of the reasons why we are separating, right? I'm part of a libertarian separatist movement. We believe that most people are authoritarian. Most people do believe that they own other human beings, that they may make rules to how other people may live their lives and choose their things.
And I agree with
Since we
you that
don't
that's
believe
wrong.
We don't believe that. We actually are choosing to separate ourselves.
And I agree that that's wrong, that tyranny is wrong, but I have a basis for why it's wrong. And the arguments that I'm hearing from you don't tell me why it's wrong. Basically, all it amounts to is that you don't like it.
No, it denies my self-ownership.
Yeah, but there's no reason why it's wrong to do that. You haven't given any reason yet.
There's no reason why I should not be a slave, is what you're saying.
You haven't given a reason why it's wrong to violate the NAP that isn't circular or self-referencing or a reassertion of the thing in question.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that I have no basis if I believe that I own myself, that I have not. That belief can be overridden by someone else, and I have no reason to say that it is an evil to enslave me.
Correct. There's not a basis for objective moral claims in your position that I've heard. And to me, that would mean that the classical liberal underpinnings of libertarianism is where the mistake, the error is. So that was the thing I said at the very beginning, is that I don't know why we would accept classical liberalism.
Yeah, I mean, if this were absolutely clear and everyone believed this, we would all be libertarian. Libertarianism is a very, very, very small belief, very, very tiny, and that's the reason why I believe that we need to separate, because most people subscribe to the belief that they may violate someone else's self-ownership. We consider that to be a great evil.
Right. And I agree with you,
consider
but
that
I have a
to be
basis as to why that's evil. I have an objective ethic. But in your position, it sounds like, well, it just is. It's just that way.
Yeah, I'd be curious if you don't mind. I'm sure that you've said this, and if it's too redundant to repeat, I would love to hear your objective.
Well, I think this is why you need something akin to theism to justify the ethics. It's not going to be.
Got it.
It's not going to be justified without some kind of theism. But look, hey, I appreciate those objections. I'm going to
also let Andrew, if you can, put Andrew on. He always has a lot of good stuff to say about libertarianism.
Okay, sure, yeah, he's here.
Do you see how that worked? I just overrode Jay Dyer's free will, and I violated his nap, and I told him what to do.
No, that's not a violation of that.
Thanks for bringing me into this space. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I was listening. I wonder if I could speak to this a little bit with you,
Sure.
Dennis.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So this morning I ate sausage and I ate bacon and I ate lamb and I had eggs. That was multiple different animals, which I participated in violating their self-autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they own themselves? How come I own them, can walk out and eat their face whenever I feel like it?
So, yeah, I'm really just trying to get to self-ownership of human beings first.
Yeah. I'm trying to extend the principle. I'm asking you why I can take a monkey and I can saw its head off and crack its skull open and eat its brains, and that's okay. How come that's not wrong? Didn't I violate his self-ownership?
We don't really believe that animals have self-ownership. I mean, I actually that's not 100% true. There are vegan libertarians.
Yeah, I mean, natural law, right? What's his name?
Wait a second. I'm so confused. You don't think that animals own themselves? Does that mean that I can SA one?
I don't know what SA is.
Can I sexually assault an animal?
Oh. Could you? Yes, you can. Of course.
Yeah.
you
Is there
can.
anything wrong? Is there anything wrong with that?
I
mean, after all, I only own myself. The animal doesn't own itself. I own the animal, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So
you can go out and ground and pound dogs in your worldview, or what?
So that is where. So libertarianism is only a basic minimum ethic of how we ought to treat other human beings. Now, on top of that, you can have all different types of religions, believe in all different types of gods, who give you whatever beliefs or whatever you have.
Yeah, this is a really cool story, dude. This is a cool story. I like the story. It's neat. Mm-hmm. Can you, as a person who owns yourself and owns a dog, go ground and pound the dog, or not?
Can you physically do that? Yes, you can.
Ought you be able to? Yeah. What? But if it's not violating the law of self-ownership, then why shouldn't you be able to go ground and pound a dog, bro?
Yeah, and there are cultures that actually believe that.
Yeah, I know. Wait. So I just want.
I mean, there's libertarians that defend these things too. So
in your worldview, you think it's okay to go out and have sex with a goat because you own the goat, bro? Well, why is that not okay then?
Well, because libertarianism isn't a full belief in a full philosophy of life. Libertarianism is only that minimum.
What sort of word garbage is this? What word salad is this? What do you mean it's not a full philosophy of life? I'm asking you specifically, if a man has a goat...
Libertarianism can't tell you that that's evil. Yeah, it can't even tell you that that's evil.
So would I do that? No. But
I'm not asking if you would do it. I'm asking why a person who owns a goat, who owns themselves, but the goat can't own itself because you own the goat, why can't they go out and do that to the goat? What could you possibly appeal to as a reason why they ought not do that?
I could appeal to a religion. I could say my religion.
I mean, under libertarianism.
Libertarian doesn't cover that. That is not.
It doesn't cover
so
that.
It's not a very useful philosophy.
No, it's not very useful at all.
Libertarianism is not a full philosophy of life. What it is, it says that you may not do these things. You may not murder. You may not thieve. You may not rape.
So is it a religion? Because
go.
so hold on. So it sounds like a religion because it's sort of now you're at the hold on, but now you're at the point of just sort of saying it has these dictates and that's what it is. Well, why should I believe those dictates? That's been the question here.
Yeah, well, and many people don't. That is why we are.
Okay, so there's not a reason to believe libertarianism. Okay.
Well, I believe there is. I believe that one owns oneself, and that each person, I believe that's a universal ethic, and I believe that each person does. I believe that if you actually start enslaving people, you are
right. So you've restated the position, right? And I'm not trying to be mean to you. You've restated the position many times, but you said it's universal, and I want to know why or how you think that's universal. On what grounds?
Because it seems like that Jay has pointed out that you're simply stating psychological preferences and your belief system, and then claiming, but this is just what I believe, and I believe it's universal, but you haven't given any justification why it's anything beyond simply your subjective kind of mental state that you're having.
Yeah.
I think that's what Jay's getting at.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I'm not too sure I can convince you of it, and I believe it's you can just say that I have that belief and I believe it very strongly. The reason I wouldn't SA a goat is not because of libertarianism, but because I have these other beliefs that are on top of libertarianism. But those other beliefs do not allow me to break that fundamental belief of respect for each person's self-ownership, that I will not turn another person.
Okay, and I'm not trying to be mean to you, Dennis, but we've heard you state your position many, many times. But we're asking very specific questions about the justification for the position. So we're going to move on. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me up, guys. I'll get out of your hair.
No, you can stay as long as you want. You can stay if you want. I don't care.
You can
Tell me what to do, Jay. I said I'm leaving. What part of I'm leaving? Did you not?
Am I overriding your NAP? I apologize.
You're overriding my self-ownership. I'm not your slave, Jay.
MC Wallace, what's up? You got unmute.
What's up?
Hey, what's up?
How you doing, man?
Good. What's on your mind?
So I want to speak about the Bible. What do you think?
Sure.
Can I make a request? There's Abraham listening. We both kind of want to make the argument, and then you can bring up if you want anyone else with it too.
The guy. Wait, hold. You talking about the guy's name is Ibrahim?
Abraham Charles.
I see eight. Let's see. I see Ibrahim.
Yeah, Ibrahim. Yeah.
Okay, so you want him to come on with you? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. If you don't mind.
Sure. And what do y'all want to talk about?
Cool. The topic is the Bible and the contradictions in the Bible.
What's your position?
Brian, you there?
What's your position?
So, is the Bible divine?
What's your position?
I'm a Muslim.
Okay, so you want to debate Islam?
I believe in the Quran. No. I want to debate the Bible.
Okay, well, I want to debate the Quran. Can we do that too?
We can do whatever you want. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
You ready for it? Or do you want me to? I'm waiting for you to give me the heads up.
Well, what do you want to talk? What specifically are the topics you want to talk about?
So, if you would believe that the Bible is divine, correct? The words of God.
Do you believe the Quran is divine?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, 100%.
Do you believe that Revelation has to be consistent with what came before?
No. So my point here is that the argument I'm going to make with what is it? That the Quran is what? Say it again. You cut off there for a second.
I said, do you believe that new revelation, i.e. the Quran, has to be consistent with what came before?
New revelation. I mean, the Quran is one, so the Quran is the Quran.
Okay, does the Quran say that the revelation came to the Jews and the Christians?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so is that the revelation that came before?
Before Islam, you mean? Yes.
Uh-huh. Does the Quran have to be consistent with what came before?
you're jumping to the Quran, right? And I said
I'm not gonna but I'm not gonna accept any. I'm not gonna. Sorry, right? So the point. The reason I'm asking that is because I'm not gonna accept any new revelations, and your Quran claims to be a new revelation, unless it's consistent with what came before. Because what came before tells me not to accept anything unless it's consistent with what came before. So do you understand that the?
Exactly my point. Why I want to debate your Bible, right? Not the Quran.
No, but your Quran is late.
So again, let's not even debate the Quran.
Exactly. That's why you don't want to debate the Quran. Exactly. Right.
I'm more than willing to debate the Quran. I'm basing it off your argument.
No, but
your argument.
No, because does the Quran say that I'm supposed to go and check what the Quran says against the prior revelation?
No, it's a confirmation. We don't believe that those.
Oh wait, it's a confirmation. How can I confirm it if I'm not supposed to go check it to previous revelation?
I can prove that if we discuss the Bible.
All right, so you won't talk about the Quran because none of you can answer. Have you seen the debate with Daniel Hakikachu?
Yeah, he destroyed you.
Oh, how did he destroy me when you can't answer the same thing that he couldn't answer?
Oh, see, this is the best thing.
No, it's not a deflection because the revelation that came before, tells me not to accept your revelation. So if I'm a 7th century, no, let's pretend we're all 7th century Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, and we're hearing, right, the Quran being recited. How am I supposed to go and confirm it if I'm confirming it against the older prior revelation?
Well, God actually tells you to confirm it.
God exactly. So you understand that's an admission of my position. That's why I'm making this claim to you. How do I confirm it? What do I confirm it with?
How do you confirm?
What do I confirm it with?
Can I?
What do I confirm it with?
God tells you. He tests you. He asks mankind
to confirm it against what? What do I go to?
The literature, the linguistics, the grammar.
The literature of what? Of what?
So
the literature of what? Of what?
Of the Quran. Of the Quran.
The Quran tells me to confirm it with the literature of the Quran?
No,
that's so stupid. You know what I'm asking you?
Bring me a verse. Bring me a verse. Just one verse, not the whole Quran.
I just asked you. See, this is why these people can't answer these questions. You see how quick they collapse? You just collapse with one simple question. What do I check it against? You said the grammar of what?
The linguistics of the.
The linguistics of what?
Just bring me one verse.
Of what? You can't answer this.
Bring me one verse and try to create one verse from the Quran. You can't. One verse, not a chapter, not 10 chapters. One verse from the Quran. But this is again.
I've got it right here. I've got it right here with your dumb Dawa script. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because so you just fumbled up on a basic question. It says. It says, he sent down the book upon them in truth, confirming what was before. He sent down the Torah and the gospel. Correct? Oh, exactly. Silence.
Talking about.
I just cited the text. You said, give me one verse from the Quran. I just did.
You're listening to what I'm telling you.
Oh, see, silence.
Bring one verse.
I just gave you the verse. Dummy, I just gave it to you.
Hold on, can you hear me? Or I want to make sure I'm not cutting.
I just gave it to you. He sent down the book. He sent down the book upon the in truth, confirming what was before. He sent the Torah and the gospel.
Exactly, and this is exactly why I'm proving my point on why I want to debate the Bible to prove.
So I just gave you the thing you asked for, and you're restating the original thing. So you can't prove this, can you?
The Bible was corrupted by man.
No,
right?
your Quran is a corrupted mismatch of the Bible. It's a copy and paste job. I gave you the thing. How do I? I'm not running. You just got bodied. How do I check that the Quran is correct? How do I check that the Quran is correct? How do I check that it's correct?
Find me one contradiction.
I just read you the verse you asked for, and now you won't talk about it.
Well, that's not even the verse I was referring to.
You asked me for any verse.
No, I told you. God tells you. God
How do I check the Quran?
Challenges.
How do I check it? Right? How do I check it?
I'm trying to tell you. Let me explain to you. So God and the Quran challenges mankind. The Quran, Allah claims the Quran is perfect.
I just read 3:3 for you. I read 3:3 for you.
3:3 here. Okay, read it again.
Oh no, for the fourth time? How do I check it?
Again.
How do I check? I'm boot. If you don't answer, I'm going to boot you.
The way you check the Quran, the way you prove the Quran is from God.
Right.
And God explains this to you. He tells you, bring me one verse like any verses in the Quran.
Does it not say what I just read, that you go and check it to the prior revelation? Does it not say that?
You're still misunderstanding. Why are you afraid to defend the Bible?
So you notice he just got busted.
Busted what?
He just got busted. Do you want to defend your idiot friend there? Do you want to answer this? Ibrahim, do you want to answer it?
Oh, huh. You didn't say my name. Peace be upon you. I didn't come in here for all of that type of heated discussion.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure you didn't. MC, what's up? You gotta unmute. MC, unmute.
I don't even see MC in here. Did you bring him in?
Yeah, he's sitting right there at the top. MC Wallace, go ahead. All right, Corey.
Yo, what's going on, guys?
All right, so let's look at what's up, dude. Right here. He has revealed it to you. The book in truth, confirming what came before, as he revealed the Torah and the gospel. So, according to the Quran, I can go to the Torah and the gospel to see that the same things taught in the Quran were revealed beforehand. And you understand this idiot just completely collapsed and wouldn't answer any of these basic questions. He even said in the discussion that it's supposed to be checked against the prior revelation, and then completely collapsed as soon as we went into a little bit of depth. Go ahead, man. What's up?
Yo, I think I can see the future, and I think what they're going to do is they're going to flood all the coastal cities, bro.
Okay. That was really funny. Corvid, what's up?
I'm now the speaker? That was weird.
What's up?
That was Corey. Who's a vet? My only point is that y'all are debating a bunch of books that were written by men.
Mm-hmm. How many cigarettes do you smoke a day?
Same as Andrew.
Okay.
So, the thing is that you're debating story versus story.
Yeah, it's really deep.
Story is better.
It's really deep, dude. Oh, you got us, man. JP. It's not atheist night, as I said multiple times. Go ahead, man. JP, what's up? I'm mute, man.
Hey, Jake.
Hey, what's up? How you doing? Are you there? You have to come back out, come back in. We lost you, dude. Can't hear you. Terry Yek. Are you there? You gotta unmute, man. Unmute. Terry Yek, do you want to talk? You gotta unmute. I don't understand why these people wait all this time to get on here and they don't want to talk.
Oh shit, sorry about the kick. I just want to say that every science book was written by a man and atheism is retarded.
Every book is written by a man. That's actually correct. So it's open discussion, and then we'll go to C. Tonight, it's Muslims, evangelicals, Protestants, Arians, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons.
Hey, Jay.
Uh-huh.
I thought these Roman Catholics were so-called scholars, and they were the intellectuals and the scholasticism, like of the West and everything, but they don't even know basic terminology of the East.
Exactly. And that's also odd given the fact that Trent supposedly attended the Eastern Rite for so long, and he doesn't know triad is like common the Byzantine terminology. This is bizarre.
Yeah. I also wanted to say about the Quran. Muhammad had a Torah brought to him, and he confirmed the Torah. And he was supposedly illiterate, so he didn't even read the book, but he confirmed it. And so when you ask them, okay, he confirmed a book that he didn't even read. When did this corruption happen? Because he confirmed that in his lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Dead Sea Scrolls. Today it's the same. It matches up. So I just think the whole Muslim position is stupid. Roman Catholicism is definitely a cult, and so is Islam.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's also later in the same surah. It's in 3 as well. It goes on to say, Allah will teach him wisdom, the Torah, and the gospel.
Yeah.
He will
That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. So the assumption is in the Quran that the revelation. Sorry, I didn't mean to boot Colin. Colin popped back in here. I didn't mean to boot you accidentally. Accidentally removed the wrong person. The assumption is that the only way that you could test the supposed revelation to Muhammad is the prior revelation, obviously. And the Quran even tells you that. It says that I'm the same deity that talked to Moses, that talked to the prophets, that talked the Injil, okay, which is not a book. J.P. Barbosa.
Hey, Jay.
Yeah, what's up?
So, I've been talking to a few friends of mine. I'm a inquirer going to a Orthodox parish in town. And I thought it was super interesting when you were making the connection between the worship of the synagogue and the temple and the continuation with modern Eastern Orthodox worship.
Mm-hmm.
For a while there, I saw that Protestantism had a bunch of problems with continuity and that things wouldn't match up. So if anything, I started going down the path of Hebrew roots and all that type of stuff, and then thankfully I walked away from that. But a pushback I've got from some of my friends is the idea that why should we care about how the Jewish people worshipped in the synagogue? And I remember in one of your videos you talk about in the Old Testament some prophet giving the instruction for the worship in the synagogue. Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, so basically it has to do with the time of Hezekiah, right? So it's set up, I think, a couple hundred years after David. But it's in my article that the Bible itself teaches sacred tradition. So I'm going to pull that up here. Let's see. So it says, my article says, when we survey the Old Testament, we realize that the patriarchs all through Genesis operated according to an infallible oral tradition. When God was not giving new revelation, of course, and so when Abraham built an altar, he didn't have a book or written text necessarily to instruct him. He had truths that had been passed down from the time of Adam in the godly line of Seth, and whatever revelations God had spoken to those people. He didn't refer back to a book necessarily called Genesis. As an even better example, we can look at the formation of the temple worship of God based on the oral tradition of 2 Chronicles 29 concerning King Hezekiah. Yeah, I was right. And he stationed the Levites in the house of the Lord with cymbals, the instruments, the harps, according to the commandment of David, and Gad, the king's seer, and Nathan the prophet. For thus was the commandment of the Lord by his prophets. The Levites stood with the instruments of David, and the priests with the trumpets. So here we have the organization of the liturgical worship at the temple, and it's said to be done via Hezekiah. However, we don't have a written record of what David commanded concerning these things. Furthermore, it's also clear, nor do we obviously of David or Gad, or excuse me, Nathan or Gad. It is also clear that David flourished some 250 years before King Hezekiah. So it would be argued then that David's revelation, right, was passed down in some form orally, presumably, and that's how the liturgical worship at that time was organized for the temple. So not everything, by the way, passes from the temple into the church. Obviously, some things were a detriment to the easy spread of the gospel. So, for example, if we're going to be setting up churches throughout the world, then a lot of the land laws that relate to Israel and the actual land, like the Jubilee laws or the not sowing seeds in a field or whatever, obviously those wouldn't carry over. Not everything about the temple carries over, right? Like animal sacrifices. But certain things do carry over. But the point here of this text is just to point out that as Hezekiah is organizing the liturgical worship, he's doing it on some tradition from David, Gad, and Nathan 200 years before his time that's not written down. And, by the way, reminder, I forgot this other text in Surah 5, which is even more clear, where Allah says, quote-unquote, we sent Jesus. In the footsteps of the prophets, we sent Jesus, confirming the Torah revealed before him. We gave him the gospel, guidance and light, confirming what was in the Torah. So let the people of gospel judge what Allah has revealed in it. Clear as day, you're told to check the revelation of the Quran against the prior revelation of Torah and gospel. How could I do that if Torah and gospel corrupt? Thus you must look to Quran. You see how dumb this is. This is how stupid this religion is, and it collapses from this right here. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, you're okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. I appreciate that. If you have time, I have one more question when it comes to Orthodox worship. I don't know if that necessarily falls under the stuff you want to go over.
Go ahead.
Sure. So, when it comes to incense, right, we see how Nadab and Abihu tried to offer incense unto the Lord, and they tried to, do their own home mix, and that doesn't end very well. A question I've had is, where does Orthodoxy get their mix of incense from? Is that just from a oral tradition? I think from asking people have given me different recipes that are used, and I was just kind of curious on that.
Well, I don't think the sin of Nadab and Abihu is the recipe. It's more so that they did it in the incorrect way. They weren't supposed to be doing it the way they did it, and so they were killed for doing that. I mean, we can go read it, but we have the prediction, for example, in Malachi 1, from the rising of the sun to its going down, my name will be great amongst the Gentiles. In every place, incense will be offered to my name, and a pure offering. For my name will be great amongst the nations, the Gentile nations, says the Lord of hosts. So Malachi 1 is predicting that in the Messianic era, one of those signs will be that the nations all over the world will offer incense to God. So there is some allowance, some prediction of this permission on the part of the church to eventually have incense as part of the worship. And of course, from the earliest days of the church up until now, that's obviously been the church's practice. So one of the signs, according to Malachi 1:11, of the true church is that you would notice these kinds of things. So I don't think it's so much about the mixture, and I don't actually know where. I'm sure it's probably just some tradition as to what makes it up. But if we go and read Leviticus, I think it's either 10 or 11. It's 10. It says that they offered strange fire as he had not commanded them. So their sin is more of an intentional inner thing, that they're doing this in some improper way. I don't think it has anything to do with like the mix.
I see. All right. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that really covers the questions I have right now. Thanks for having me.
Father Deacon, do you know what the tradition is? Father Deacon's a participant in the liturgy, so he could probably answer this better than me. What do you know where the tradition as to what incense is used? I mean, I'm sure it's like frankincense, myrrh, right? Like the wise men.
Mm-hmm.
Father Deacon, are you there? All right. He's indisposed at this time. So.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's a good question. Let's see. Zeus. We are being honored the presence of the chief of the Greek gods. The Greek pantheon is honoring us with its leader, Zeus. What's up? Zeus, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, man. What's up?
Yeah, so I have a couple questions. First of all, I remember in a stream you had with, I believe it was Dr. Bo Branson.
Uh-huh.
He mentioned essentially the ecclesial structure of Old Testament Judaism.
Uh-huh.
How they would have synods.
Yeah, it's in the debate with it's in the debate with Dale the Protestant.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you to go more in depth into that and how that relates now with the New Covenant Church.
Well, everybody can go watch that stream. It's called J. Dyer, Bo Branson debate with Dale the Protestant, and Dr. Branson gives just some analogies between the structure of the synagogue and the rabbinical structure in the Old Testament and how they judged matters. You have the Levites and the priests judging matters, and then the synagogue system set up by Ezra helps to do that throughout Israel and in the diaspora. So his point in that talk was just that it's decentralized, and the best model for that, he argues, you find in the Orthodox Church. It's not the Roman Catholic system. Mr. Owl.
Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, I had a question about discussing if we as traditional Christians, I'm a Catholic, sometimes miss the forest for the trees when debating very technical theological matters. I see that as a Catholic, I can glean a lot of knowledge and wisdom from our Syriac Christian brothers, our Orthodox Christian brothers, and I wonder if sometimes during these debates that if we aren't, if it wouldn't be a better use of our time to think about ways that we can build a better traditional Christian coalition to overcome the evils of the world.
Okay,
instead of
we think that theology is first and foremost. So how are we going to build? How are we going to build a coalition with people who are heretics? Should Basil have built a coalition with Eunomius?
Yeah, but from my Catholic perspective.
Okay, can you stop chewing bubble gum if you're going to come on the frickin' stream? And I'm just not in the mood for this kind of a piety discussion here. Colt, what's up? Dude's over here with damn Bubblicious, trying to piety signal with Bubblicious. What's up, man?
Oh, hey. Before I begin, I just want to state real quick that I think today is the anniversary of the fall of Constantinople, so I think prayers would be good. I don't know. Sorry if it's random, but that's just something that was on my mind. Anyway, two questions I have. So one is about the Trinity, and I've noticed that there's a lot of debate about people. I know Protestants, I know Catholics do it too, but I know it's more of a proof text for Protestants. They'll show these proof texts like, oh, well, this verse in Galatians, Paul calls Jesus the Spirit of Christ, and there's other passages, I'm sure, I don't know them off the top of my head. What would be your take on some of those Bible verses that they'll point to? I'm assuming there would be economia, not hypostatic origin, right?
Yeah, nobody believes that the Holy Spirit sent Christ, right? But if you read Isaiah, I think it's Isaiah 40, I just read it last night, 49 or something. Let's see. Here I am, the Lord has sent me. Maybe it's 42. I just read it last night.
Anyway, something I was
No,
also
hold on.
say.
No, this matters. I understand. I want to go to it though, because it's in Isaiah and it's a really important passage for this point. It's 48. So this is a messianic prophecy. It's Christ speaking. Come near to me. I have not spoken in secret from the beginning. From the time that it was, I was there. And now the Lord God and his Spirit have sent me. Okay, so this is the Messiah speaking about his coming, his economia. Okay, and nobody out there believes that the Holy Spirit generates the Son. So this proves that we can't take every passage like this as that's economia and read it back into the inter-Trinitarian relations.
Yeah, if you don't mind, because I was actually going to bring up something else that I thought that was interesting about this topic.
Sure.
So
yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, so and I was just wondering if you could check my thinking to make sure it's proper. But something I've thought about is that a lot of people who defend the Filioque is that they'll look at those passages, but something I've thought about is that, well, if the Holy Spirit coming through the Son, if that is a reflection of hypostatic origin, I don't think that can work, because from what I understand, if you read the Gospels, what does it say? Mary and the Holy Spirit conceived. So wouldn't it be fair to say all of the actions of the Son are because the Spirit and Mary, conceived, or the Holy Spirit caused Mary to conceive? So would it be fair to say that the Son in some sense was through economia manifested by the Holy Spirit, since it was the Holy Spirit that caused Mary to become pregnant? Would that be a fair statement, or is there something wrong with that?
Oh, wait, so I'm sorry. Say this argument again.
I don't know. Something I was just thinking about is, since all of the actions of Jesus, the incarnate flesh, isn't that because the Holy Spirit caused Mary to become pregnant? So would it be fair to say that in some sense the incarnation was caused by the Spirit in some sense? Since, sorry, this is kind of weird.
No, I mean, I think you can say that because, that's what the passage in Isaiah just said. It's talking about the incarnation, yeah.
I don't know. I just couldn't help but think about it because I know, even though I'm a Protestant, I know generally, with the exception of the Moravians and maybe, Mennonites, generally Protestants accept the Filioque. And I've just been really trying to think about this issue because for the longest time, I actually used to be like a deist and a Trinity denier because, I was a Trinity denier because I thought the Trinity was Sabellianism. But of course, nobody taught me what the Trinity actually meant. When I learned what it actually meant, it makes a lot more sense. And I'm actually a Sunday school teacher at my local church, and I remember when I got a question about the Trinity, I said, hey, look, this isn't the Western view, but this is the Eastern view, and I'm giving y'all the Eastern view because this is what's given at Constantinople. By the way, I haven't read the Council of Constantinople. I'm still working through some of the pre-Nicene fathers. I actually just got
Are you talking about Constantinople 1?
Yeah, sorry, Constantinople 1, the Second Ecumenical Council.
Yeah.
I don't know, that was just... I don't know. Monarchical Trinitarianism seems to make more sense to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's the best way that we refute Islam, too. Now, if you notice in John, John 15, it says, Jesus actually explains in this very passage, if you pay attention, the difference between personal origin and economic sending, economia. When the Helper comes, who I will send to you from the Father. So Jesus is sending it to the apostles in the economia, right? So that's the economia. The Spirit of truth who proceeds from the Father. Okay? So very clearly in John 15:26, Jesus distinguishes for us the economia and the existential hypostatic origin, which is from the sole cause, the Father alone.
Okay, the second thing I wanted to discuss was the Canon. And again, probably not the best thing for me to say, but I say Orthodox more so than Catholic on this issue, but y'all really started to win me over on the Canon because I don't know if people are just being dishonest or they haven't read it yet, but I've seen patristic witness to the Deuterocanon.
Yeah, you can just search. It's literally cited dozens of times. The New Testament cites the Deuterocanon dozens of times.
Yeah, I've been looking into those passages. I actually just got done reading the Wisdom of Solomon, and
yeah, did you notice that? Did you notice Romans and Wisdom parallel?
Yes, but I also noticed parallels between James and Sirach.
Yeah, and there's parallels when Jesus, a lot of his parables, they're in deuterocanonical texts.
Yeah, and the only one that I really haven't seen yet, and keep in mind I've read very little, is 3rd Maccabees, but I know that's not the core of the debate.
Well, 3rd Maccabees is interesting because it's another attestation to the way that abomination of desolation can be mirrored, because Ptolemy does the same type of actions of what Antichrist has and will do, which is you have Antiochus Epiphanes in Maccabees profaning the temple. You have in 3rd Maccabees Ptolemy instituting a buying and sell mark that everybody has to have, which is interesting because it actually says, I didn't realize, I've forgotten it says this. I went back in there the other day and I was reading 3rd Maccabees. It actually says the mysteries. So what do you know? 3rd Maccabees actually mentions the mysteries, like as in the mystery schools.
What chapter?
2 says when Ptolemy assaults the Jews, he creates. This is, by the way, is a key helper to understanding and decoding the meaning of the apocalypse. So let's see. Now here's a bunch of. This is just a bunch of new. This is some Catholic website, but it's basically citations from the Deuterocanon in the New Testament. But let me show you this fascinating passage in 3rd Maccabees here. I don't want a PDF. Let's see. It's another PDF. No. Okay, 3rd Maccabees 2. And this is verse 27. Oh, it says Jewish. Oh, I knew it. I knew there was a Maccabees reference to the word Jewish. This is what I was looking for when that idiot Black Hebrew Israelite called in. Was this right here? Dang it. And see, I found it. I knew I had just read this. And I forgot it was in. It says the Jewish nation. Look at that. There ain't no reference to Jewish in the Old Testament. Let me tell you something right here. Look at 3rd Maccabees 27. Ptolemy proposed to inflict public disgrace upon the Jewish community. He set up a stone tower in the courtyard with this inscription: "Nobody who does not sacrifice shall enter the sanctuary. All Jews will be subjected to poll tax and the status of slaves. Those who object to this are taken and forced to put to death. Those who are registered must be branded on their bodies with fire and the ivy leaf symbol of Dionysius." The mysteries. Now, in my text it says, those who are not initiated into the mysteries. Wait, it says it right here. Look, verse 30. In order that he might not appear to be an enemy to all, he described, if any of them prefer to join, those who have been initiated into the mysteries. Look at that. Fascinating text in 3rd Maccabees. So the very text that people downplay are actually very deep insights into the motivations and machinations of the antichrists in history and how they operate and act. And Ptolemy here is saying that you have to take the mark. This is an early mark of the beast. In other words, this shows us the patterns. Ptolemy is doing the exact same thing. He profanes the temple too, by the way, if I remember. Just like Epiphanes did in the earlier Maccabees, Antiochus. And just like Titus does in 70 AD. So this proves mirroring. You understand?
I just want to specify that I was not being anti-3rd Maccabees. I just stated.
No, I didn't think you were.
All right. Well, yeah, because I was about to say, because I was listening to a debate the other day between Trent Horn and some Protestant over the Canon, and I actually thought Trent Horn did mostly well. The only area where I noticed Trent got stuck.
Was it the James White debate?
No, I don't know who he debated, actually. Okay. I don't remember. I'm sorry. It was on Pikes with Aquinas.
Oh.
But I'm trying to remember what it was. Okay, so this is very technical. But you know how in the Latin Vulgate, Ezra and Nehemiah are First Esdras and Second Esdras, but sometimes that was just one book called First Esdras. I don't know what y'all call it in the Orthodox Bible, but in Protestant Bibles with the Deuterocanon, it's called First Esdras. In the Latin Vulgate, it would be Second or Third Esdras. I know that kind of stumped Trent up a little bit, and I'm just thinking, this ain't a problem for Orthodox. That's in their Bible.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's Esdras in our Bible, so.
Yeah. And this is an attack I've seen from Protestants, and I'm kind of wondering what your take is that Orthodox have a different canon, but the only thing that I'm aware of is that I think the Russian Orthodox Church has, I don't know what y'all call it in y'all's Bible, but if you get a Protestant Bible with the Deuterocanon, it's called Second Esdras. Is that that's in the Russian Bible, right? I don't know if it's in the Greek Bible.
So we have what's called First Ezra, which is Second Esdras, and then Second Ezra, which is Ezra and Second Esdras. So it's both.
All right, I was just bringing that up because I know that I'm pretty sure that's in the Russian Bible. I don't think it's in the Orthodox Study Bible because there's no full Greek Septuagint translation of it. You'd have to translate it from the Latin Vulgate. It's just from the research I've done. I just seen that it's in fact, one of my dear friends who's half Russian, half Ukrainian, she's got a Ukrainian Bible and a Russian Bible, and they both have that book. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about this.
I'm sorry about that.
No, you're correct about this, and also I think some of the Slavonic Bibles also include Enoch, I think. Now
that's interesting.
Yeah, they're not necessarily canonical, but it's included in some of those versions.
Yeah, I was going to ask because I know there's also Fourth Maccabees, which I know is put as an appendix, but not canonical.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what the status of Fourth Maccabees is, but I think for the Orthodox it's not that big of a deal because we don't have a problem like admitting that there's tradition outside of the written text. So it would really only be a problem for somebody who has a kind of a sola scriptura type position. And so when we argue for the canon against the Protestant, we're not arguing that our position is right because of sola scriptura in the Orthodox Church. We're saying that it's not a problem for us because we're not restricting divine revelation to the written text only. So we don't have a problem. I mean, some of the early church traditions are in extra canonical text, Proto-Evangelium of James, right? I mean, there's traditions about Mary in those extra canonical texts, and it's not a problem for us, nor is the Book of Enoch a problem for us if we admit there's tradition outside of the written text of Scripture. And some of those extra canonical traditions can be oral or written down. They're still extra canonical traditions. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I didn't think that was a problem for y'all since sola scriptura is not a principle for the Orthodox. So I didn't think a book or two variation was going to be devastating. So I don't know. I was just kind of curious about that. And then I know this is going to sound gay and retarded, but part of the reason that Orthodox is winning me over is I just really like the content of these books. I know that's a stupid argument to make. I know there's the historical, but I don't know, when I try to tell people about the Bible, I want to tell them about Tobit because it's a very inspiring story. Or maybe women, I might tell them about Judith the widow that became an unlikely hero and stuff like that. And, it's kind of unfortunate because something I tell a lot of my friends is that, these books were printed in the original King James Bible, except for Third Maccabees or Psalm 151, but all the rest were. And then I tell them that Eastern Christians unanimously accept these books, and it's kind of terrible because I think up until the 1830s, all of these books were printed in Protestant Bibles in their own section, mind you, but yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let's see. Now, I'm going from memory here that I might be thinking of Second Enoch because it's only in Slavonic, which is interesting. That maybe some Slavonic Bibles include it because it's only in Slavonic. That's interesting. So, Second Enoch is only in Slavonic. Jewish Supergraphica preserved in the Slavonic language. I'd be interested to know why it's only preserved in Slavonic. That's interesting. A lot of this stuff we don't even know. Like, there's like mysteries around various books. So, but am I right that some Slavonic Bibles have Enoch? Kind of like the way the King James Bible, the original King James Bible included the Apocrypha, but it was like an appendix. I think some Slavonic Bibles have Enoch as an appendix, if I'm correct. Anyway, Father Deacon can maybe speak to this. If you're available, we had a question earlier about, do you know the origin of the incense that's used in the liturgy? What specifically is it just a tradition? You gotta unmute if you're there, FDA. Storm the Cat, $5.
Sorry, what did you ask? Because like when you bring me in, like for it mutes, like I can't hear you for a little bit, like a few seconds. But you were asking something about the.
Somebody asked if there's any like basis, or is it just a tradition in terms of like what incense is used in the liturgy?
Oh, that's weird. It just was with the clergy this week, and we were talking about incense, and here you guys are asking what incense. Well, typically, ideally, is the act like a good quality, like from Jerusalem, of frankincense or myrrh.
I mean, but he was asking why that. Is it merely because the wise men bring that? Is that why?
I think so. I mean, for example, Father Russell, to answer this question, somebody was getting all upset. You know, why do you Orthodox use gold in your altars, and shouldn't that be better used on the poor? Now, my remark is like, there was somebody in the Bible that gave that same argument. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Judas.
Yeah, he didn't end out too well. But number two, and this was Father Russell's point, and I always love this, because Orthodoxy just keeps what was always kept, and gold was always used in worship of God. Who are we to undo it? And that's a really kind of great way of thinking about it, that frankincense, myrrh, and gold, these are used in worship. We're not going to undo what has always been used in worship for God.
All right, let's see. Now remember, guys, tonight's discussion is specifically Catholicism, Libertarianism, Protestantism, Black Hebrew Israelites, Anti-Trinitarians, Muslims, Unitarians, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons. That's tonight's topic, so I'm not mad at anybody asking about the canon or incense, but those aren't the topics tonight. Mr. Owl. You gotta unmute.
Hi, I'll be concise.
By the way, did you hear that supposedly, I don't know if somebody was making a joke, but they said Nick Cage is gonna play Job? What the heck? I feel like I'm in a dream. Go ahead.
Hi, I'll be concise again. What in particular, could you elaborate on what keeps Catholics and Orthodox from forming a strong coalition?
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Where they still respect each other and acknowledge each.
So again, that's not the topic. So again, I'm not trying to be mean, but specifically I said what the topic was. Paul, what's up? Is Nicolas Cage going to play Job? What the heck, dude? Maybe somebody was making a joke on Twitter. I thought that was real. Oh, this makes it like it was Job. What? Oh, oh no. They're gonna make it a horror. I guess it could be a horror. Job is kind of a horror. Job is kind of a horror story. So our hero Nick over here is gonna be reportedly playing Job. Oh no, now it's saying it's not Job, it's... Oh no. I thought it was going to be Job. Alright, now I'm worried it's going to be something blasphemous. It's going to be playing Jesus' father, Joseph? Anyway. Never mind. Good news, disconfirmed. Paul, what's up, man? I got to unmute.
Oh, hey, Jay. I do apologize, but you emphasized that it's about Catholic, Libertarian, Protestant. I just had a question about Orthodox history. If you would just entertain my question, would that be okay? Or
I mean, is it a simple question or like something really in depth?
No, it's I'm reading a book by Timothy Ware. It's called The Orthodox Church. I'm sure you heard of it, right?
Yeah, I've read it.
Yeah. Well, I'm currently chewing through. I'm about halfway through, but it has to do with the schism of the Orthodox Church.
Okay.
So
you mean with Rome, or what do you mean?
Yeah, between the Greek East and the Roman West.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there like a specific flashpoint that Orthodox Christians point to? Like, yeah, this is what actually caused the schism? Because apparently there's like many different schisms, like, you know, the Arab control of the Mediterranean, the barbarian invasion, the papacy.
I think, yeah, to answer that question, I think there's a series of events that we see the papacy evolving into a thing that kind of goes outside of its bounds, particularly in the 11th century. So the Gregorian papacy is something to look to, the Gregorian reforms. 1054 is kind of an easy date to point to in terms of mutual excommunications. But the dogmatization that we have an issue with is really at the Council of Lyons in 1274. So we would take issue with that in terms of the double eternal hypostatic procession. And then it's reaffirmed in Florence. And between Lyons and Florence in the West, we have what's called the Palamite synods in the East, which are the rejection of the teaching of Lyons.
Okay. Oh, that's all I got. Thanks a million.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think that's kind of the definitive, because that's the definitive statement from Rome as to what their position is that we definitively ended up rejecting. So, let's see, Cato.
Hello.
Yo, what's up?
I just have a question about heresy, specifically a Roman Catholic heresy.
Okay.
So I've heard you say that I've heard Losky say, I think it was Losky who said that the Filioque way subdues the Holy Spirit in the Trinity and therefore causes ecclesiastical problems in the West. That being that the Holy Spirit doesn't actually guard the Latin Church from error anymore because they've demoted the Holy Spirit. And I'm just wanting to know what you think about that. Do you think that heresy, specifically the Filioque way, has any societal problems and or can cause societal issues to occur in the West?
Yeah, so this is argued more in a more philosophical way in Dr. Philip Sherrard's book, Church, Papacy, Schism. Farrell's God, History, and Dialectic also argues this point, which is that you get two different manifestations of two different Europes. You get the Byzantine Europe of the first millennium, which is the the Orthodox view, and then you get the Franco-Papal Latin Church, post-Gregorian reforms and post-Filioque that manifests in a very different way. So, and I agree with that.
Yeah, because a friend of mine once told me that Orthodox Church or Orthodox philosophy doesn't hold to consequentialism, and I remember I read a good bit through Father Seraphim Rose's book about I think it's called Orthodox Survival Course, where he literally makes a consequentialist argument about how the Latin West goes in a far worse position than the East could ever go because of the heresies in Rome.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's not equivalent to having a consequentialist ethic. I mean, I could use an argument from David Hume. That doesn't make me a Humean. So.
Oh, right. Maybe I got the word wrong then. I also have another question. Do you know Jonathan Hill? I know you've made your actually, this isn't on topic, but it's kind of on topic because it's about a bit Orthodox theology. He denies that Christ assumed a universal human nature. And could you expand a bit about what you mean by that and what?
Right. So this is taught in St. Cyril in many places. If you get the book, Christological, St. Cyril of Alexandria, the Christological Controversy by John McGuckin. There's multiple chapters in there about Cyril's Christology, where he explains that recapitulation necessitates this notion of assuming all of human nature in a single divine hypostasis. So this is taught by Athanasius. This is taught by Cyril. And it's also later taught at the Seventh Ecumenical Council. St. Theodore the Studite teaches it in his On the Holy Icons book. So the only way that all men are resurrected is by Christ assuming the nature of all men. That's what recapitulation is. Are you familiar with recapitulation?
Yeah, I've heard you explain it.
Well, are you familiar with it?
I'm pretty sure all men are resurrected because Christ assumed all human nature.
Yeah, so the extent, right. So Adam's fall, right, is on all of his descendants, right? And that's why they all die. And that's 1 Corinthians 15. And so all men are assumed in Christ and their nature is resurrected. That doesn't mean they're all saved because you're judged on the basis of your individual hypostatic mode of willing. That's St. Maximus. Yeah. So this is the cosmic scope. This is taught in St. Maximus. It's not even up for debate. It's a very well-known doctrine.
Yeah. Is that the same as apocatastasis?
No, it's not the same.
Right. Okay. That's all I had to say, Jay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a great article on this from Professor Mantzarides. Let me pull it up for you. Georgios Mantzarides, and the article is Christ is a Universal Person. Have you read that?
Okay. I'll get to it if I have no money right now, so I can't really buy anything right now.
It's an article. It's right here. It's easy.
Oh, okay.
Easily accessible.
All right, okay.
Thank you. And I mean, he's just kind of laying out this. I mean, he's one of the most famous theologians in Greece, very famous Orthodox theologian. So.
Is he a priest?
He's a professor of theology at University of Thessaloniki. I don't know if he's a priest. I don't think he is.
Right. Okay. I think I heard you mention him in one of your older videos.
Yeah, his book on Gregory Palamas is really good. So.
Yeah, I think I know what you're on about. All right. Well, thank you, Jay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's this article about Christ as universal person, and this is explaining this point of recapitulation and the assumption of Christ assuming universal human nature. Again, it's taught in the Seventh Ecumenical Council and the writings of St. Theodore Studite on the Holy Icons. Maddie Ice. It's also all of Maximus's cosmic theology is premised on the same idea. Maddie, did you want to talk? What's up? Maddie, are you there? All right. Unmute. Go ahead. All right, moving on. Space Hound. Space Hound, what's up? Somebody, there was Go ahead.
I don't know much about Orthodox, but what do you guys believe about Lordship salvation versus free grace?
Yeah, I mean, that's really more of a Protestant evangelical discussion. We believe that you can lose your salvation. We believe that you have to spend your life, basically, in repentance and good works. That's theosis.
Okay, that pretty much answers it.
Sure, yeah. Let's see. Man in the something. I can't read it. Man in camo. I can't read it. I'm looking at the man in the camo. Oh, yeah. Hee hee. You there? Unmute. Uh-huh. Are you calling me from the metal factory?
Oh my God, yeah. Sorry about that. I'll be outside. There we go, that's better.
He's calling from the factory where they make metal. Go ahead.
Anyway, you put
Man, I can't hear nothing, dude. I can't hear nothing. Sorry, man. David? Dude out here, he's dude out here excavating, getting iron ore. Trying to argue getting iron ore. What's up, man?
I just had a question about like in terms of the Trinity.
About what? About what?
The Trinity.
Uh-huh.
what is your response when you like hear somebody say like they're one in purpose, they're three different beings, but only one in purpose, but not in like essence?
Well, I would say look up monarchical Trinitarianism. That's Dr. Bo Branson's lectures. It's really, really good, necessary approach to the Trinity that the Orthodox have. It's very different from most Roman Catholic thought and Protestant ideas. So that would be a place to start. But I mean, I can't really give you a whole Trinity lecture in terms of like what all that is tonight. But I appreciate that. You can go look up his lecture. Stan, what's up, Stan? Hold on, Stan. To the people in the chat, no, it is not too late to call in. If you want to call, we've only gone for a couple hours. I'm a little worn down, but I still got enough gas in the tank to pull a full. I can be a Mad Max Rakatansky for a little bit longer. Jamie, could you make me a double shot so that I can, so that I could get some fuel? I need some fuel. Go ahead, man. What's up?
Hey, how's it going, Jay? Thank you very much for the work you do. I just want to say that first. So I had a question as it's more of like a history on Protestantism kind of thing. Wondering if you know the history of Protestantism in Russia. Only asking because my parents immigrated there.
I'll go ahead and tell you, I do not know very much about Protestantism in Russia at all.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks anyways, man.
I'm sorry I couldn't help you. I mean, there's plenty of Orthodox people though that are like super duper deep into history and all kinds of niches of history, but that's not a field I know anything about. Thank you. Thank you. All the great. Alt great. I can't tell what it says. Alf the Great. Alfred the Great.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey.
I've recently looked up something in Islam, and apparently they have like a bodily resurrection at the end of time, where everybody gets resurrected into bodies. And I was just wondering, is this like sort of objective proof of copy paste from Christianity? Like sort of they've just gone taking it.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that alone prove, but I mean, you know, Jews believed in resurrection, so we wouldn't say that Christianity copied and pasted Judaism because of resurrection. So I wouldn't locate it just in the idea of resurrection. I would say if you look at like throughout the Quran, you have all of these stories, people mentioned, biblical stories are flipped and mixed up. There's whole passages of the Gospel of John cited in various places of the Quran. The Quran in passing mentions the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of John. It mentions the Torah, the Injil. I mean, so I think that other things might point to copy-paste, but I wouldn't say that resurrection alone does.
I was just sort of emphasising the bodily part because it sort of makes no sense if there's no one to inherit the entirety of human nature. I think you said it earlier. That's what sort of made me go, hang on. That's like sort of weird because if it's based on the fact that Jesus took on everyone's nature, right? The entirety of humanity, and that's why everyone gets raised. And then if there's no Jesus to do that in Islam, then why is everybody being raised into their own same physical bodies?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'd be curious why Jews or Muslims would believe in the universal resurrection. That's a good question.
Yeah, and that would sort of point back, I guess, because it's sort of like we have the explanation later on for the resurrection, but the Jews have it there, and it's like
I suppose, yeah. I suppose they would just say, well, that's just what God wills, so He just wills it to be that way. But you know, that's a funny thing though about that. This is bringing up a point about the Quran that I see where you're going. Yeah, so many things in the Quran that only make sense in the context of the totality of biblical revelation, like Messiah. Okay, Messiah is a Jewish Hebrew term out of the prophecies of the Hebrews for an anointed one. Okay, without the context of the anointing and the high priest being anointed and all of that, this idea of Messiah means absolutely nothing. And in Islam, there's really no significance or meaning for this term. So it's a crib and cut and paste. And I would say, yeah, you have a great point here, which is that so many things in the Quran don't have any context or big picture meaning. They're just mentioned. And it's like the Ark of the Covenant. They think it's a flying box that had Moses' jewels in it. I'm serious. And the reason they thought it's a flying box is because it said it had wings on it. So they didn't even understand that the wings of the seraphim on the ark doesn't mean the box has wings. So there's so many things.
Down with the Torah, maybe.
Yeah. There's so many things in the Quran. If you look up Gabriel Said Reynolds' book, his book is actually just going through like 10 or 15 examples of weird stories that are in the Quran that don't make any sense, and they're all jumbled up from the Bible.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No, that's actually a great point. Exactly. Like, why are all the human beings resurrected? Another point you could make too on this is, well, in Islam, like, how is God dealing with evil, right? Because in terms of Christianity, it makes sense that there's a bodily resurrection and there's an end to evil. But like, what does it mean in Islam to how is your sin dealt with? How are the demons dealt with? Right. It doesn't make sense, because in Christianity, the person of Christ is the Christus Victor, the conquering one. He's the one that does this work. And in Islam, it's just like, oh, well, Allah just willed it to be this way.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, doesn't Islam technically have original sin if you go with the Orthodox position of sin or original sin? Because if you don't affirm that we have the guilt of Adam and it's just about a fallen nature, then the fact that I guess we are prone to sin, which I guess every Muslim sect would agree with, that we're sort of prone to sin, and that's at least our nature. Everybody has inherited that from their body. I mean, if you had inbred parents, you'd sort of have them same defects. So that nature, if you corrupt it via inbreeding, I guess.
Yeah, and we see that with Ibarra, right? We see that in real time with Eric Ibarra.
Right.
That was a joke.
That's perfect.
It was a joke because.
Oh, I don't know.
The joke was that I'm saying he's inbred. It's come on, that was a joke.
Right, my bad. I went right off my head. Anyway, though, thank you very much for the.
Yeah, good questions.
Cheers, brother.
Roman Omen.
Hello.
Yo.
Hey. I don't know if this is on topic or not, but I have a question about monism in the New Age.
Okay.
My dad is super into that stuff. He's all into like Osho, Sagaru, Abraham Hicks, all of that new age, all of that stuff, right? And every single time I try to talk to him about Christianity, he's just so used to Western Christianity, Catholicism, Protestantism. He has no idea what Orthodoxy is, and I always try to bring up a coherent reason why. Because his whole shtick is that God is love, right? And I always try to explain to him that doesn't make any sense, because it's true. I mean, he thinks everything is God, right? So I'm trying to explain to him that doesn't make any sense, and that he thinks that all religions are saying the exact same thing, but they all inherently contradict each other. So how do I explain to him that you understand what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, I would honestly say don't worry about trying to argue and debate with your dad, because if he's not really... unless your dad asks you specifically, hey, why do you think this, or what's your answer to this, you're never going to debate or apologetically convince your parents of something. So focus on living a virtuous life and living Orthodox Christianity. And eventually, your dad will see that in you, and he'll start asking you questions that you will never, ever apologetically debate your parents. Luke Amos. Go ahead. Starting to get a headache. What's up, Luke? Let me read some of these super chats. Storm of the Cat, $5. Another thing that can cast doubt on science is Einstein's relativity. It's as bad as evolution, in my opinion. It leads to all kinds of contradictions. That basically, you have to assume a kind of postmodernism. Yeah, I think you could make that critique of relativity. Like, it kind of seems like it's super speculative, and if it's true, that basically everything's undercut, including the principles behind relativity. Storm the Cat, $5. Einstein himself, when was confronted with self-refuting problems, and trying to find a one-way speed of light, he said, we can define it as true if we all agree it's a social convention and it's true. Well, that seems ridiculous. So I haven't read... I did read one essay from Einstein about the United Nations and world government, so that tells me a lot about Einstein. Saint Michael the Archangel, $3. Do an impression of Cameron, the math wizard, the ever sweet and round Michael Bitch Teats Lofton when they meet Daddy Francis for the first time. Well, I'm not gonna do that for $3. That requires, but yeah, I mean, if people want to follow the idea that there's a Bayesian QuickBooks spreadsheet argument for the papacy, be my guest. Sam Sulek, $10. I have a simple question: what's the best philosophical argument for divine simplicity? I have Protestants are skeptical. Protestants are skeptical of divine simplicity. Everybody believes in divine simplicity who believes in divinity and the Trinity. Okay, everybody. Even Protestants believe in divine simplicity, so I'm not sure what you mean there. If you mean like absolute divine simplicity, that's like the traditional Roman Catholic Augustinian position about defining God according to the Neoplatonic definition of what simplicity is, and then what's stated at the Fourth Lateran Council by the Roman Catholics when they accept Peter Lombard's definition. So I'm just not sure what you mean that there's Protestants skeptical of divine simplicity. Anybody who doesn't believe in divine simplicity in any sense would be a polytheist, because divinity is one. It's not composed. It's not acted upon. It's perfect. It doesn't have parts. It's not in time. It's not in space, etc. Those are all the things that we believe about the divine essence. Ghostitious, $10. Will you debate biblical Unitarian? I mean, he can hop on the stream if he wants. $10 again, Ghostitious. Will you debate him? If not, what are the videos that refute his position? We did a 3-hour lecture years ago about the Trinity in the Old Testament. Every argument, debate against Muslims goes, for the most part. Daniel Hakikachu goes into arguing the triad from the Old Testament. So just look up, is Jesus divine? Is the Trinity God? That's my talk from 4 years ago. Can we get a Eric Ibarra at the Golden Corral impression? I think I found heaven. How's that? Luke, $5. How in the world do you not have 700,000 subs? Hey, that's right. Exactly.
Yo, Jay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I on?
Yep.
I have a question. So it's about like Mormonism, but it's like related to it might in some way be related to what we're talking about today. Can I ask it, or is that too much off
No,
topic?
go ahead.
So I was talking to some Mormons the other day, and they were telling me that they don't actually believe in like a prior God to the Father, and like some of them were saying like he exalted himself, and then we started talking, and they were talking about like creatio ex like materia and how it's like necessitated, and then they were telling me that like there's like this uncreated super material that like he derives logic from that material, but it's like impersonal, but then it like listens to him because it loves him. Like I don't know if you knew anything about that. It was just
this sounds wild. This sounds like an Aristotelian Hellenic view.
Well, I think it was like weird Neoplatonic stuff they were talking about too. It didn't make any sense. So I asked, I was like, in their weird version of like like
it makes that would make actually that would make sense because Plotinus is trying to reconcile Plato and Aristotle, so that would make sense.
Yeah. But what they said is that like the material, and I was questioning him. I was like, so he derives his logic from the material, and then they were getting all mad. So I was like, does he submit to the impersonal material?
Yeah. So this is polytheism, paganism.
Yeah. So, but yeah, exactly. They were like, so there's this uncreated super material that, and there's also like this like logic that he follows. So I was like, is this like pseudo deism? And they were like, because he like submits to the logic, but they like exist co-substantial, so they like have the same will as each other. And he said them, and then he told me that
this is, if you read Basil's Hexameron 2, this is where Basil starts critiquing Aristotle's dyad. This sounds exactly like Aristotle's
Well, he said
dyad.
that the material is conscious, so it is a person, and when he forms that material into new gods or something. That's what he said. He said the material is ultimately conscious, this uncreated material, and it loves him, and he loves it. And so when he speaks his word, the material out of love for him
responds, and then creates. I was like, what in the world?
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I would guess that maybe they're kind of all over the place. You know what I mean? Like, I remember reading that, like, I remember reading an old Mormon website where they had some of the sermons of, like, Brigham and Joseph Smith, and, like, sometimes they would sound like they're Unitarian, and then sometimes they would sound like they're polytheists, and then sometimes they would sound like they're Trinitarian. So I would imagine they're kind of all over the place.
Well, I kept asking him, I was like, what do you think about this? And he's like, well, the church doesn't have a direct statement on this. So the church never directly said that there was a God before the Father. So we're just going to say there wasn't. And he, like, exalted himself from a human form. It was so weird.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now, they have one guy who's a systematic theologian, Talmage. But I'm trying to find his systematic theology. So that would probably be one of the better routes to go. But yeah, I appreciate that. That sounds pretty nutty. Let's see. What is that, guys? Does anybody know the Mormon? There used to only be like one Mormon systematic theology, and it was by this Talmage dude. And I know that because, like, 15 years ago, I was going to debate Justin Hart, who was Mitt Romney's faith and values person.
Oh, I found it. It's the systematic theology of Jeff Warren.
You mean Warren Jeffs? You mean Warren Jeffs? Because that's the traditional Latin Rite Mormonism. Yes, yeah, that's the traditional Latin Mormon Rite, which believes in, like extreme polygamy. But you got to turn them into prairie muffins. Like they got to look like 1800s. Aiden, what's up, Aiden? Go ahead, Aiden. What's up?
Can you hear? Oh, sorry about that. Hey Jay, I'm an inquirer in the church. I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. So I just have a couple of questions on amillennialism, and then a quick question on the Trinity.
Okay.
So, obviously, growing up like a witness, the whole point of the faith is really just that we're living in the last days, and that all these things are going to happen. Like the world governments are going to start persecuting false religion, and then only Jehovah's Witnesses will be left as the only standing religion. And then Jesus Christ is going to come back with the 144,000. So I just didn't know if the church has, the Orthodox Church has an explanation as to what the 144,000 are, and then if there's going to be like some crazy events that happen prior to Christ coming back.
Yeah, I would say get a book like I think one of the elders has a commentary on the Book of Revelation, but I'll probably say at this stage, probably the best commentary on Revelation would be Peter Leithart's 2-volume commentary. My godfather is presently writing a commentary on the Book of Revelation, Dean Arnold, which will be good. And also David Chilton's commentary on the Book of Revelation is really good. So I would probably agree with either Chilton or Leithart's. My godfather will also, I think, probably. I mean, he's read all the ones that we've mentioned, so it's going to be a really good work when he gets it done. So I'll probably be defaulting to Dean's when it gets written, because he really wants to reconcile kind of all these topics. But Scott, what's up, Scott? Hey.
Hi, Jay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, so recently I was having a debate with a Roman Catholic on purgatory, and he brought up Matthew 12:32, which essentially states that whoever speaks against the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, we'll have right, which presumes that sins can be forgiven after death, and Orthodox believe that too, but that doesn't prove purgatory.
Okay, and what would be like the Orthodox view, essentially?
Right, so purgatory is the idea that there's a created fire that torments you to pay for the temporal punishments that you owe to God. And you don't see anything like this notion of a gigantic temporal debt scheme where God's holding you liable to all this that you have to pay off in the afterlife. And it's all really this deviation from the early church's canonical penances. So the idea is that if you committed a certain sin, you would be banned from the Eucharist in the very early church for a certain amount of time. And so the idea was that, well, if you committed a bunch of sins, and this would be stacked up. And so God's basically stacking this up like a bean counter. And then he's punishing you with created fire, which I don't know how a soul's burned by created fire. But and then when you pay that off, you can go to heaven. Again, nothing like this in the early church. The statements about being purged by Paul are people in the church being purged, having their works tested at the last day judgment. Paul says very clearly that God is a consuming fire. And so when St. Mark of Ephesus, if you read his homilies against purgatory, when he rejects this, part of the reason that it's rejected is that there's no created God. God doesn't have a created fire. God is a consuming fire, and so the uncreated energies are the fire of God. So there's no such thing as created fire. It's all just pagan silliness.
And then what exactly is like the Orthodox view of like when you go into the afterlife, like people praying to you, like how exactly does that process work in Orthodoxy?
Right. So prayers for the dead help and aid those. You could read the Life of the Soul After Death by Father Seraphim Rose. But that's not really tonight's topic. So Roman Catholic. I know that's kind of purgatory is relevant, but we're not doing Orthodox afterlife tonight. We're doing Catholic stuff, Libertarianism, Protestantism, Black Hebrew Israelite, Arians, Muslims, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons. All of those are on the topic, guys. If that's not the topics, please don't bring. I'm not mad. I'm just saying like that's not the topic. John Ronald Donald, the RDDs, the Ron Donald do's and the Ron Donald don'ts. Very few will get that reference.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I wanted to ask specifically about Filioque and how we see references of it in 6th century, which is usually what Catholics use to justify it.
Well, I mean, depends on what you mean by the references, like what specifically? Because a lot of times these are texts about economia, or they're texts that can be eternal manifestation. They don't necessarily have to be eternal double hypostatic procession.
Yeah, and like not specifically, but something that I guess sort of references it, or maybe something even like St. Augustine's references to, like, I guess some people call it predestination.
And what about it?
And like, I guess a lot of Western Christianity is like based on Augustine's ideas.
Absolutely, sure.
So, like, what do you think of that?
Well, the Orthodox Church did not accept the totality of Augustinian theology as its representative mindset. It chose the Cappadocians, their view of the Trinity at Constantinople I, not the Augustinian view. So really, we don't have to even go too deep into that. I'm not dissing you for that question. It's a good question. But all we have to do really is look at Constantinople I accepting the Cappadocian model of the Trinity and not the Augustinian model. End of the debate. Okay, man in the camo, did you want to try again now that you're back? I'm looking at the man in the camo. Oh yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about earlier. I'm not sure why I was cutting in and out, and then right afterwards,
it's okay.
You started.
Go ahead. It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to have some questions about Catholicism, but you pretty much answered them already. Some other person already asked. So my questions are like, can I talk about a little bit about Protestantism and Libertarianism?
Okay. Sure. That's on topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted to do multiple at the same time or not. But anyway, first one is, I was kind of like in a discussion with a Protestant, and we were talking about the St. Peter's cross or something like that. But he was like telling me like, oh no, it's not just. I think he's a Protestant. But he was like, oh no, it's not St. Peter. It's just Peter. You just call him Peter. So I was like, well, he became a saint because he died in Christ, and all that. And I showed him verses about it, in the Bible, saying like the saints will inherit the kingdom and all that.
But he says, like, he says, like, nothing in the Bible says that you become a saint when you die or whatever. So I wanted to see what your thoughts on that was.
Well, I mean, the New Testament does talk about the saints many times over in Paul's epistles. Paul writes to the saints at Ephesus and so forth. So it's just a tradition in the church that people who lived exemplary holy lives are honored in that way because they manifest the theosis and the uncreated grace that they were partaking of. So, anyway, number one, what's up? Johan Vandershoot for $3 says, you should have a floating window of the topics. People always call in off topic. You should have dancing lights and flamingos. I mean, it's listed in the top of the, the Twitter space. But I appreciate that, John. Sean, $10. Will the libertarians and atheists actually have the same reality check that Richard Dawkins recently did? It's hard to say. I mean, a lot of people have, I think in general, humans have a religious commitment to whatever their worldview is. Even if they're totally irreligious, the way humans operate, we have a religious commitment, just fundamentally. So, kind of think it's almost like everybody's in a cult until we find the truth. Junior Gallo, $200. Wow, big fat super chat. Really appreciate that. You made the whole evening tonight, Junior Gallo. So much mega props to you for that huge super chat. Sincere Hypocrite, $3. There are no oughts in a world that lacks telos. Correct. Except for my NAP and my freedoms. Yeah, I think we saw at the beginning of this chat that the sort of just reasserting the libertarian position without giving an account for it is kind of a weak position. How come everybody that debates you doesn't understand the questions that you're asking? It's also tiresome when you pre-sub them. Well, I think people aren't used to and are not familiar with what it means to give an account for a position. They think that means just restating it or telling a story or telling the psychological motivations as to why they believe it. No, we're asking for the good reasons to believe or to not believe this or that position. And people just don't know what that means. So, Sarah from Leo, $1. I'm not trying to rain on the Lowbirds parade. Maybe you should figure out what the SEX GOAT issue is when we try to set up our libertarian communes. I mean, it's a pretty common critique of libertarianism that's gone around. I mean, it used to be like 7 years ago, the critique was, is it okay for me to do whatever I want coitus-wise with a cat carcass? That was the way it was framed 7 or 8 years ago. And then libertarians just kind of sit there and be like, I guess if you want. But actually, if you go back to my Kokesh debate, I said, is it wrong for me on my private property to erect giant billboards of the most horrendous prawn? Oh, yeah, exactly. How do we handle that? I don't know. Fart Hub for $10. I don't know how to join the call. You call the Twitter, man. Twitter space. It's linked in the show description, and it's been linked in the chat probably 100 times. But I have a question regarding the universe. Can you point me in the direction of something on cosmology from the church and enlightening other scientific stuff? I love your stuff. I don't think we have a set opinion on cosmology. So, the focus of the Bible and Orthodox theology is the things that relate to God. And then the things that relate to the natural world, I mean, we have some things to say about that. But I don't think we're wedded to any specific view of physics or cosmology, unless the view of physics or cosmology interferes with the theology. I'm just not. I'm not trained in that. You could probably look at Dr. Bradshaw has a degree in physics, so he would probably be better for that. Somebody did just point me to a book that Dr. Bradshaw, I think, wrote the opening for, and I haven't read the book yet. I ordered it. And it's a physicist who wrote a book about energy and physics from an Orthodox perspective. Sounds really fascinating. But maybe that would be something that you would want to look at in that direction. But I'm not trained in those topics. $5. 5 says for $5. Do you have any information on the Trail of Blood? Yeah, it's a crazy cult ideology. It's completely ridiculous. There's no Baptist, secret Baptist tradition. If you look at the Trail of Blood, their list of the Baptist saints going back to John the Baptist is a bunch of anti-Trinitarian cults. So it's a completely ridiculous book. Sean, $10. Hey, May, for some reason I watched an old episode with you and Benny Wills from 5 years ago. It was great. You were wild. Thank you. Be cool to see Benny back on. Yeah, well, Jamie just did an interview with Benny Wills a couple months ago on her channel. I like Benny. I haven't really talked to him in a while. I know what he's up to. Paranoid Joe, $10. Thank you. Kristen, $5. Please consider raiding Father McHale when you wrap up. Okay. Thank you for the stream. All right. Appreciate that. Emmett, $3. When you were studying Calvinism and went to Rome, did you have to throw away tag? I was really unclear about that for a long time. I thought for a long time maybe I could be a precept Catholic, and then I just threw it away because I thought, well, I'm going to submit to, Thomism and, my assumption was if Thomas Aquinas and the Roman Catholic doctors of the church, if they didn't see it, then I probably am not on to anything new. So good question. Narrow Path, what's up? I'm sorry, number one, you were next. Did you want to speak? Gotta unmute.
Can you hear me?
What's up?
Jay. I just think it's hilarious when people do that. It's like over and over, man. So I am newly chrismated Orthodox, I guess probably about 8 months ago, and still I'm trying to lay off talking to like Protestant family and friends as much as whenever I first started, because it very quickly becomes like just not worth it. And so trying to practice that. Every once in a while I still get into some discussions, and often it comes up the idea of like, I know it's not as simple as, well, the Orthodox Church hasn't changed in 2,000 years. But whenever the conversation gets to that point, they'll often kind of talk about things that have changed and then call them innovations and say like, why is that different from the Roman Catholic Church, or why is that different from all of these other things? So how would you, I guess, frame that in a way that makes it so that you're like, makes it make sense?
Makes what exactly make sense?
Like, so the Orthodox Church, it's what I've heard other people say that kind of makes sense to me is that the same way that a fire in a fireplace, in one sense, it doesn't change because it's still in the fireplace. It's still doing what it's supposed to do. It's not out in the house. But it is constantly changing in another sense because that's the nature of fire. And so in the same way, like humans and the human part of the church is constantly changing, and there's developments, but that's not the same as like innovations in theology and things like that,
Yeah,
I find it difficult to explain that.
Yeah, I just would out of hand reject the idea that dogma develops or changes. So the explication of something is not the same thing as it changing. So we would say that the totality of the faith is present in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century. There's nothing new that's being added other than terms that make things more clear, more precise. So in other words, inhypostatized is dogmatized the 5th Council. It's not used in the 2nd or 3rd century, but it doesn't matter because the idea is there, or what that is expressing is implicitly there. Just like the word Trinity isn't in the Old Testament, yet they had the same faith as we do, according to Hebrews 11. So I guess I'm just not understanding like where the disconnect is. Like why do they even think that it's what's even changing? What I don't understand.
Well, I guess things, anything that would be different, like liturgy, I guess evolving, if you could call it that, or whatever they had before John Chrysostom's liturgy. Why would they change it to this, that, and the other? I think it's hard to see. I guess it boils down to nuance and inability to.
Yeah, I would really say that the fundamental components of the liturgy are there from the beginning. It doesn't change.
Yeah.
Now there might be certain lower T tradition, not capital T tradition, that like Russians do this at this point, or other people do that, but those are things that are not essential to the liturgy. There are liturgical essentials that are common amongst the different rites, so to speak, but that doesn't mean that the essence of that is changing.
Okay. Yeah, no, that helps. It's
I mean,
more, I guess,
the Nicene Creed doesn't exist in the 2nd century, but that doesn't mean that the faith developed and evolved so that you could have the Nicene Creed. It's no different
and
between.
We don't want to be antiquarians too, because you actually see one of the problems with the Orientals and why they went into heresy was trying to be locked in, for example, into a language and concepts.
Right.
They couldn't develop their words to address certain kind of issues that came up. So we're definitely not antiquarians, but like Jay said, obviously the dogma, the essentials don't change.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he stated the Father Deacon there made the point you're trying to make, that okay, there's certain things that are like new to that generation, right? The 2nd century didn't have the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess whenever or past instances, I guess it's difficult to articulate it in a compelling way that doesn't just sound offensive or doesn't just sound like I'm like changing the goalposts or something like that. So
yeah,
I guess I just need to work on that. But also, just last second here, shameless plug. Doing a podcast. We got 100 subscribers. Curse World Problems. Orthodox adjacent, but more so we're just clowning around. We're a couple of clowns that do comedy and stuff like that. So if you want to check it out, that'd be a massive honor. And anybody else who's listening, we don't know how else to grow it, but I think we're doing well. We got like 7 episodes out. So thanks for your time.
All right, and that is Narrow Path Enjoyer. Rock Barcelos. Got to unmute. Unmute. Unmute.
Hello. It's for me?
Yeah, what's up?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. What's up?
So, regarding libertarianism, would you say that perhaps regarding ethics, the forced association part of the criticism of libertarian ethics, would you say they have a case there or not?
For what? Dissociation. What are you talking about?
Forced association, like the criticism on forced association, that the state forces you to associate, right? I think that there's a case there to be made, the ethics, but I don't know. What do you think there?
You're saying, is it wrong for the state to force associations? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like, for example, like a society, right? A society, in order to be a society, has to be voluntary. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, that's one of those assumptions that they have, but how do we know that that's the case?
I don't agree with that.
How do we know that that's the case? Why should we think that?
Right.
I mean, are you voluntarily a member of a family, or are you born into one?
Right. In that case, you are just born there, right? Of course.
Well, I mean, don't Milton Friedman and certain members say that that's like trampling of liberty? It's like a collective.
Right.
Like a baby's a parasite on the mom, right?
Right. But in the case of, if a person is just born in there, the person doesn't have a choice, of course.
Yeah. So is that a violation of liberty?
Right. Well, if a person is just, I guess I would have to think more on that.
That's fine. You can think on it. Let's see. So tonight's topics, as we said, are listed. So please, not that I'm not fussing at that guy that was on topic. Aziz, what's up? Aziz Ansari. I went full communist. We're straight up red terror up in here. What's up, dog? Sup, dog? Aziz, you gotta unmute.
Hello.
Hey.
Do you hear me?
Uh-huh.
I'm coming from Protestantism, specifically Christian Reconstructionism. Maybe that's the way how I found your channel. Thank you for your clarity in your contents. It's very helpful, especially in how you flesh out the transcendental arguments, and also got interested in orthodoxy. So now I'm on a couple of things to reconcile and see how in my tradition could be kind of fixed. One of them, it would be, as you point out, penal substitutionary atonement in its Nestorius kind of
Nestorian elements.
issue. So one, I had in mind two ways to direct my mind to solve it. One would be, my question is, could you please comment on my directions? So it could be helpful for me
on
to
what?
see.
Comment on what?
So two directions. One, to see how, first, what is the nature of wrath of God from Orthodox perspective? What is anger, wrath, and hatred? Are these divine energies? And if so, is it distinct from
the answer is that you're correct that God's justice. I don't know if I would say anger and wrath are energies, but they express the manifestation of divine justice. So yeah. My mind is almost mush. I don't know if I have any more energy. So we're going to have to end it. Guys, I want to remind you to head on over to chalk.com. Use the promo code J44Life to get access to the best in supplementation available. That's CHOQ.com, chalk.com. Use the promo code J44Life. That's J44, JY44LIFE. And you get access to this amazing product over here at chalk.com. Boost testosterone. Man up. Become a toxic masculinity emitter. The toxic masculinity will emanate from you when you use chalk.com. Use the promo code J44Life, and I will see you guys very soon. Be sure and get tickets to our event. As you guys know, June 22nd in Las Vegas. It's going to be an epic infotainment event. The tickets are in the show description right there, the next live event. Be sure and get tickets now, and I will see you guys there. And otherwise, so